Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. The Seeds of Dominion. 1. I always knew the world was constructed on lies. Not minor falsehoods or innocent misunderstandings, but carefully cultivated fabrications designed to shape reality. From my earliest memories, even before my parents disappeared, I sensed that truth was not something freely given. It was deliberately hidden, erased, and rewritten. My parents were among the first to resist. They stood against the Dominion when resistance still felt possible, believing knowledge was a right worth risking everything to protect. They vanished when I was 6, quietly removed by the regime, their identities reduced to whispers and fading memories. Ronan and Elise Marek, old friends of my parents and former resistance fighters themselves, took me in. They taught me how to navigate the unseen currents beneath the surface, how to decode the hidden language of control the Dominion embedded in every broadcast and headline. They showed me the creeping corporate feudalism that had slowly replaced democracy as powerful corporations silently took ownership of entire districts, deciding who prospered and who disappeared. By 16, I was adept at uncovering secrets. I immersed myself in encrypted data streams and forgotten archives. Ronan and Elise warned me. Knowing too much was dangerous, but ignorance was deadly. The Dominion thrived because people feared the truth. They accepted convenience over freedom. My decision to become a journalist was calculated. It allowed me to move unnoticed, to gather information without drawing suspicion. Yet, deep down, I knew this was more than a career. It was a weapon against tyranny. Truth was powerful, but proof was lethal, too. You ever feel like you're chasing ghosts, Joran? I glanced up from my tablet, where Dominion data feeds ran endlessly, searching for cracks in their carefully constructed narratives. Devin Rains, my closest friend since our academy days, watched me from across the cafe table, worry shadowing his face. We chase ghosts because they're the only thing the Dominion fears, I replied evenly. Devin's discomfort was palpable, a subtle anxiety coloring every gesture. Recently, he'd changed. He'd grown cautious, hesitant. The war's been over for years, Devin said softly. Maybe they won because no one noticed until it was too late. Now, All we're doing is marking ourselves as targets. His words unsettled me, not for their truth, but because they were spoken from fear. Devon's courage had once matched mine, his idealism unwavering. Something had shifted. "What's changed, Devon?" I leaned forward, lowering my voice instinctively. Surveillance was everywhere, hidden in plain sight. He hesitated, eyes flicking nervously to the security camera mounted near the ceiling. "There's a new list," he whispered. "It's not for criminals or dissidents. It's for people who question too much. It's called the inquiry list." I understood immediately. A blacklist was straightforward: immediate punishment or exile. The inquiry list was something darker, insidious. It marked you for isolation, slow erosion, and eventual disappearance. "You're on it," I stated flatly, watching him closely. He nodded slowly. "We both are." A silent understanding passed between us. Devon was frightened, and fear made people dangerous. Still, I wasn't about to stop. Not now, when the stakes had finally become clear. 3. Devon disappeared within days. His presence simply ceased. No messages, no records, no traces. Just silence. I pursued answers with relentless determination, hacking into secured archives, whispering in underground circles, piecing together fragments of his fate. Each revelation deepened my dread. The Dominion Protocol wasn't coming. It had arrived. Our world was now governed by rigid conformity, loyalty, measured in unquestioning obedience. Citizens weren't people. They were assets, evaluated for their utility, discarded when inconvenient. I stared numbly at the evidence on my tablet. Democracy hadn't merely been undermined, it had been methodically dismantled. Devon wasn't dead, not physically. He had been absorbed, transformed into something compliant and controlled. 4. I knew when they would come. Patterns were easy to spot if you paid attention. Increased drone patrols, subtle shifts in daily broadcasts, neighbors becoming suddenly distant. It was all carefully staged. When the knock finally came, I was already on the move. Out through the fire escape, down silent alleyways, navigating shadows with practiced ease. My heart pounded, but my breathing remained steady. Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. The train station loomed ahead, my gateway to the industrial underground. Passengers waited silently, their faces blank, eyes fixed firmly forward. I slipped onto the platform just as Dominion enforcers emerged, their armored presence imposing and inevitable. Joran Vale, the voice sent a chill down my spine. Not the enforcer's voice, but Devon's. I turned slowly, dread twisting inside me. Devon stood among them, dressed in Dominion black, his eyes hollow and distant. I recognized the vacancy instantly, The Dominion had taken not only his freedom, but his spirit. "Come quietly," he intoned, emotionless. "You gave in," I accused bitterly. "They made you afraid, and you surrendered." "I adapted," he replied mechanically. "No," I said sharply. "Adaptation isn't compliance." His gaze faltered, something brief and vulnerable flickering behind those empty eyes. Devon reached toward me, an automated reflex of the Dominion's control. The train doors hissed open beside me, a brief window of opportunity. Devon lunged, grabbing my shoulder. Instinct took over. I drove my elbow hard into his ribs, feeling him recoil sharply, gasping for breath. His grip loosened, and I wrenched free, leaping onto the train just as the doors snapped shut behind me. Through the window, Devon stared helplessly, now a shadow fading into the distance. Regret etched his features briefly before the darkness reclaimed him. The train surged forward, carrying me into uncertainty, but also toward freedom. 5. As the city lights blurred into a mosaic of neon and shadow, I steadied my breathing. The train hummed rhythmically beneath my feet, a steady reassurance that, for now, I was still free. Passengers around me stared blankly ahead, eyes purposely unfocused, trained to remain ignorant of anything that might threaten their carefully curated peace. But I was awake. The Dominion thrived on the apathy of the masses, believing control was absolute because compliance was easy. Yet beneath that facade lay a deep-seated fear of truth, a fragile illusion ready to shatter. I had lost Devon, just as I'd lost my parents. Each loss carved itself into my being. Painful reminders that truth always came at a cost. But their sacrifices were not in vain. They'd ignited a flame in me, nurtured by Ronan and Elise. A flame of resistance, a commitment to remember, to speak, and to expose the lies. The Dominion underestimated the strength of those who remembered, those who chose truth over comfort. They believed themselves untouchable, their rule eternal. But power built upon lies was fundamentally unstable, vulnerable to those willing to risk everything for the truth. As the train raced deeper into the industrial outskirts, darkness settled around me, punctuated only by flickering lights and distant shadows. I pressed my forehead gently against the cold window, eyes scanning the landscape rushing past. Factories loomed on the horizon, silent giants standing guard over secrets yet undiscovered. My heart steadied, determination hardening like tempered steel. They might hunt me, silence me, or erase my name from history, but they couldn't erase the truth. Not while people like me still breathed. The Dominion hadn't won, not yet, on a parallel track, unnoticed. Another train moved quietly through the shadows. Inside, illuminated by the pale glow of a screen. A figure stared intently at my image, captured by surveillance cameras. Eyes narrowed thoughtfully, studying every detail of my escape, every gesture, every defiance. From the tinted window of his train car, Devon watched the darkness unfold, shadows reflecting in his eyes. Eyes no longer hollow, but haunted by the flicker of something forgotten. He whispered softly to himself, a truth long buried, but impossible to erase. The truth is not a ghost, it is a weapon. And outside, the city faded slowly into darkness, distorted. I left home 5 years ago. As soon as I crossed that stage, high school diploma in hand, bypassing my peers, swept up by a wave of crying mums and proud grandparents. I was done. The boot of my car held as much of my 18 years of life as I could stuff into 3 boxes and 1 suitcase. I'd armed myself with a bank account full of every tip and paycheck I'd received from my waitressing job and an early acceptance offer from a university 2 states away, as far as I could get from a place I'd once called home. The night before, as my parents sat in some fancy restaurant for a reservation with friends they'd forgotten to tell me about, undoubtedly arguing with each other behind plastic smiles, I packed away my clothes and books and bed sheets in neat little rows until my room was almost barren. Apart from the old wooden furniture, my bedroom was cleaner than it had probably ever been, and I laughed at thinking about how, if the situation was different, it might finally make my mother happy with me. At 10:07 p.m., they arrived home, my father slamming the door as their whisper shouting floated upstairs. I knew they weren't being considerate of the fact that I might be sleeping, but rather they worried about the possibility that a commotion might alert the neighbors, that they would see through the cracks in the foundations of their picture-perfect dream house. They didn't come in to say goodnight. Hadn't since I was 8, and old enough to read myself to sleep. As I pulled out of the parking lot and left my formative school years in the back windshield, I thought about what my parents would tell their friends, the neighbors, the busybodies in the grocery store checkout line. Would they lie and tell everyone I had accepted a scholarship for some prestigious university overseas? Or maybe I'd traveled to Africa to work in humanitarian aid, something they could brag about and say, "She's made us so proud." Possibly, they'd invent a job with NASA or an internship at Google. They hardly knew enough about me to know what I'd actually be studying or what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was sure they wouldn't be bold enough to tell the truth, that their daughter had disappeared without warning while they spent their day in board meetings and having sex with their personal assistants in hotel rooms paid for by their companies. There would be no missing persons report or flyers offering an egregious sum of money in reward for my safe return home. Nothing that would cast a shadow on their spotless reputations. I would fade further into the background of their lives, as if a figment of their imagination, only resurrected when one of their friends spotted me in one of the professionally shot family photos, stilted and artificial, and asked after me. That's if they kept the frames up at all. My parents would have to dig up my coffin from the deepest parts of their memory, plaster a smile on their face, and grit their teeth. They would spin some vague anecdote about speaking to me on the telephone last Tuesday and how well I was doing. And maybe they'd go visit me at Christmas. They'd have forgotten all about me by the time they brought out the first course. I mean, they hardly remembered I existed, even while we lived under the same roof. That's why I was so shocked when they called me one Sunday, 5 years after I left town and never looked back, and asked me to come for a visit soon. I had no idea how they knew my number. I'd changed it after moving and never given them the new one. That's why I didn't respond for almost a minute after hearing my father's voice through the tiny speaker. I almost convinced myself I was dreaming or having a stroke. Maybe I'd temporarily slipped into an alternate reality where it was normal for my father to have my number, to call me out of the blue and invite me over. Anything to explain why the fuck he was calling. There was no special occasion. Nobody was sick and dying, and there was no upcoming birthday to celebrate. They just wanted to see how I was doing and make amends. They missed me, they said, through the crackling of the landline. I wondered if they had finally snapped and gone crazy, if they'd learned a sense of humor and this was some kind of prank. Or perhaps they had early onset dementia and had forgotten that I had never been much more than a roommate they had complained about having to spend their hard-earned money on. I told them I would think about it and immediately hung up. I spent the next 2 days trying to forget about it altogether until I came home from work to a letter in my mailbox, a one-way ticket dated 2 weeks from then, set to arrive at the airport an hour out from the town I grew up in. On the front of the envelope, my address, written in my mother's sloping, elegant handwriting. Nausea settled in the pit of my belly. How did they know my address? I'd not kept in contact with a single person from my childhood. The hairs on the back of my neck tingled as the growing sense of being watched settled into my skin. Then a thought popped into my head. Had they known the whole time? Had they known where I was all these years and never bothered to reach out? Suddenly, I was 12 again, and realizing my parents were never going to care about me the way the kids at school were cared for. This confirmed what I had always known. I was alone in this world. It took some deliberating, but I decided I would go. I would see what it was they wanted from me, and if they really had changed. I told myself I wouldn't give in to whatever manipulation tactics they might pull. I would be strong and remain distant. And when it was done, I would demand that they never contact me again. Even still, my bones were heavy with paranoia the following weeks. I elected to hire a rental car to drive from the airport to their house. There was no way I'd give my parents the satisfaction of driving me, of having any modicum of control over me once more. And this way, if I needed to leave, I wouldn't be forced to wait 20 minutes for a taxi. I parked on the street. The house had been repainted a soft eggshell color instead of the previous gray and rows of gardenias lined the fence where there had once been neat box hedges. I breathed deeply through my nose before raising my hand to knock. My mother pulled the door open as my fist made contact with the wood, causing me to stumble back. She must have been watching me from the window. Waiting, she was smiling. That was strange in its own right, but it was weirder because I knew it wasn't my mother's smile. Her smile never reached her eyes. She would never do anything that would cause lines to form on her face. Her smile always gave you the sense that she was laughing at you rather than with you, pitying you. My mother did not smile, but when she did, it was always forced. This was a genuine smile. It was happy. I felt immediately that something was deeply wrong. A shiver ran through my spine. There was something wrong about her face. It was fuzzy around the edges, as if she was wearing a mask. I rubbed at my eyes with closed fists, trying to clear my vision. But the effect remained. I figured I was tired from my flight, but the closer I inspected her, the clearer it became that something was off. It looked as if someone had tried to draw her face as accurately as possible. After taking a long glance at a picture of it, my mother reached towards me with outstretched arms and drew me into an embrace. I stood stiffly, with my arms by my side, trying and failing to remember when she had last hugged me. Surely at some point in my childhood. Definitely not after the age of 10. She invited me inside. This house was nothing like the one I'd left. Cold and sparse, decorated as if a model home. It was warm and filled with color and light. I wondered if somehow my memories of my horrible, lonely childhood had managed to warp my recollection of the house itself. But I knew that wasn't right. This new hallway was illuminated by a warm glow, and funky paintings hung from the walls. The dining table was set with a red gingham tablecloth that my mother would have called tacky, and a vase of sunflowers. In the kitchen, my father took a large tray out of the oven before pausing to take a long pull from the neck of a beer bottle. I had never seen my father drink beer before. He used to say it was the common man's drink, and that real men drank whiskey. He turned to say hello, and where his face had once been clean-shaven and professional, stubble grew freely. Like my mother, something was off. And it wasn't just the facial hair. His nose was smaller than I remembered. Eyes just a fraction too far apart. From afar, or at a passing glance, it was the man I'd grown up with. But as he stepped closer to greet me, his features shifted. It was like looking at an optical illusion, and when I changed my gaze, the true image would slip into place. They watched me. To anyone else, it might seem they were worried, for I hadn't said a word since my mother opened the door, but I could see it in their eyes, the suspicion. They were wondering if I'd noticed, waiting for me to say something. I stuttered out empty platitudes about being happy to see them, and they shuffled me over to sit at the table. Dinner was pistachio-encrusted chicken breast served with a peach and goat cheese salad. When my father announced the menu, I stopped short, fork raised halfway to my mouth. My mother was allergic to pistachios. This was a fact she despised, as she perceived any sort of weakness to be a flaw, and my mother was not flawed. I said as much, but my mother just stared at me with an odd look and told me she didn't have any allergies. She never had. And then she went on eating, cutting her chicken into bite-sized cubes and placing them delicately on her tongue, never breaking out in hives or becoming short of breath as her throat closed up. I was beginning to feel as if I was going out of my mind. I managed to stumble my way through conversation, letting my parents do the brunt of the work, barely processing a word they said. I excused myself to my room, citing exhaustion and an early night. My father followed with my bag, and as I reached the top of the stairs and turned right towards my old bedroom, he laughed at me. It wasn't the same boisterous laugh he'd had at dinner when discussing his golfing buddies. It was sharp and croaky, like it didn't belong to him. I hadn't seen my father laugh enough as a child to know which one was more his own. My bedroom was to the left, he said, with a curious look on his face. Don't you remember? And he pushed past me, guiding me down the corridor to a room I knew was not mine. I followed him slowly. Inside the doorway, he dropped my bag, calling good night over his shoulder as he moved back downstairs. I locked the door. The furniture was the same, but there were pictures on the wall I had no recollection of. Myself and my parents at the beach and in the snow and with my grandparents. These were not my pictures. My mother hated the sand, and the first time I'd been to the beach was with some uni friends a year after I left home. I had never met my grandparents, let alone taken photographs with them. They had both died before I was born. I sat down on the bed. It was made tidily, with the same striped sheets I had packed in a box all those years ago. I sat there for hours, listening as my parents cleaned and made their way to bed. When I was sure they were sleeping, I slipped out the door and into the rental car. As I drove to the airport, heart racing against my rib cage, I knew one thing for sure. I was certain that those people were not my parents, a price to pay. I should have known better. As cliché as it sounds, nothing in life is ever free. It all started with my dream trip. We were bouncing down the streets in the French Quarter to the tune of live horns blaring and drums pounding, forcing this mystical string of rhythm that shivered up from my toes to my hips. I had over-elaborated in mixed spirits with colors of red, orange, and green, doused in crushed ice. I had saved up an entire year for 3 whole days of fun. The ultimate girl trip. Now here I was, trapped in this padded room, all by my lonesome. It's better this way for everyone, at least in my opinion. Now back to how I got here. I digress. I promise it will make sense later on. Anyways, we were partying with all the other thrill seekers. The weather was perfect. I mean, it was hot, but that's what you want in July in New Orleans. Hot, humid, and rainless. Everybody was spreading Southern love. Gold, silver, purple, and green beaded necklaces rained down like candy from a kid's pinata. It didn't matter if you raised your top or not. The love for tourists was overflowing. The street vendors were making their rounds as well, so quick and elegant, with the words that rolled off their tongue. It was like they were singing you a nighttime lullaby, weaving a spell of sweet nothings and joy. Little did I know, that is exactly what they were doing. I have never thought of myself as an overly superstitious person. I say overly because I did avoid having my feet swept and never opened an umbrella in a building or house. Outside of that, a black cat was just a black cat. I didn't believe in witches, shamans, witch doctors, or black magic. I understood the undertones of voodooism in the bayous of Louisiana. I took a mythology class during my undergraduate studies. I even did a research paper on it. I knew a good story when I heard one. And that is exactly what they were. Stories. I digress. My attention was drawn to a street vendor that had his face painted in gold. He had on a jester hat decorated in colors of purple and silver. He had on a purple blazer with purple dress pants to match. His feet were nestled into pointed green boots trimmed with white. He had multiple beaded necklaces going down his left arm and was shooting confetti out of a wooden pipe that resembled some type of flute or oboe. I made my way closer to capture a video. The vibes from that one was something magical. It was 90 degrees, and he wasn't sweating. That should have been my first clue. Something was off. People were passing by, pointing and laughing. I got closer, but still was far enough away that I looked as if I was just a part of the crowd celebrating on Bourbon Street. He placed the pipe down on a little box as an elderly couple stopped to admire his painted face and outfit. He tried to hand the woman the necklaces on his arm, and her husband, I assume, shook his head no. The guy was like 6 feet tall, but did the daintiest curtsy I had ever seen, and I couldn't contain my giggle. Neither could the couple, and the man accepted the beads. When the couple tried to give the beads back to the court jester, he shook his head no and put his hands up to signal 20 ya. The husband tried to give them back again. The jester took 3 of the beaded necklaces back and then put up one hand to now signal that as the total. His wife laughed beside him. I mean, I get the humor. What better place to get swindled than the streets of New Orleans, baby? Memories to keep for a lifetime. He gave the hustler the money, and then they bounced down the street. I had recorded the entire scene on my phone, and when I looked up, we had made eye contact. I felt almost locked in his trance. The beginning of my demise. I looked down at the stupid, tarnished rose gold ring with the blue opal stone that was now trapped on my finger. Sorry, there I go again, jumping around the story. Again, we locked eyes. I was more than a little tipsy and had the audacity to wink and giggle. He put his confetti flute back to his mouth and blew in my direction. He wasn't going to hustle me, and that was for sure. I know how it works. The group I was with shifted, and somehow we got closer to him and his show. This time, when he blew, confetti made it onto my shirt. He had a cheering audience now. The air smelled of booze, sweat, and cigarette smoke, mingled with hints of too strong cologne here and there. But that did nothing to deter the crowd. He presented a new sleeve of beaded necklaces in multiple colors. The flute pipe went back to the box. People were so drunk that they were totally fine with paying price for necklaces you could get from the nearest dollar store. But not me. They were being thrown from balconies for free. I couldn't hide the skepticism from my eyes. I loved the camaraderie, but no scams will empty my pockets this day. He locked his eyes with mine again, and then moved towards me. This time, he grabbed my hand and twirled me around in a circle to the beat of the live music that was playing in the streets. My cheeks were aching from smiling so hard, but I was not going to fall for his swindle. My friends were cheering me on in the background, happy that I was finally letting my hair down. I was a little dizzy from the alcohol and the spinning. The jester then enclosed my hand in both of his, and when he pulled back, there was a ring on my finger. I don't know how he did it, but I wasn't paying for it. "Take it back!" I screamed over the music and noisy patrons. He shook his head no and put up his hand to indicate $25. I laughed and repeated myself. He changed it to $15. His light brown eyes seemed amused by my defiance to be swayed to part with my hard-earned money for a ring I could have gotten from a bubblegum machine. To be honest, I had already been hustled when I went to the marketplace the day before and paid $75 for an ugly dress because I was sold a dream. He went down to $10, and he almost had me until a lady behind me said that she would buy it for $25. I tried to take it off my finger to give it back, but he stopped me and gave me a huge smile. His teeth were about the prettiest I had ever seen, complementing his gold-painted skin. He really looked like he was out of a painting. He had a broad nose, and he had a set of long lashes that any woman would be jealous of. A handsome fellow, he definitely was. Again, not a bead of sweat, and his skin was flawless. He nodded, and then pressed his lips to the back of my ringed hand before shaking his head at the woman, and spoke. "This here trinket is for the one who doubts the ways of the bayou. She has been chosen," and then gave her a beaded necklace instead. I felt a flush of heat go over my entire body. The accent made it sound so poetic. Everyone continued to cheer him on until all the necklaces were gone. And then that was that. Or so I thought. He turned back to me and winked as we all dispersed. My party and I made our way down to the end of Bourbon Street, and when it was time to go back up, I tried to take the ring off my finger to give it back, but I couldn't get it off. In theory, the good things, when we came back to his area of business, he was gone. Little did I realize then that he meant what he said when I was chosen. All that was left in his spot was an empty box and pieces of confetti that littered where he once stood. No matter how many times I replayed it in my mind, I still can't figure out the pivotal moment when I chose my fate. Or better yet, my fate was chosen for me. Why me? No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get this stupid ring to come off. At the time, I thought it was all of the salty food and alcohol I consumed on the trip. But when we made it back home, it was still glued to my ring finger. Of all the fingers he could have put it on, it had to be the one that indicated I was taken out of the marital market. Like I said before, I have never been an overly superstitious person. My beliefs are my beliefs. When the first dream hit me, I thought it was just a coincidence. I had a dream that I was drowning The golden man with the perfect teeth was looking down at me from a black boat, smiling. Instead of beaded necklaces on his arm, he was holding a funeral wreath with a name I recognized on it. The odds, right? Or at least, that is what I thought, until 3 months later. The person actually passed away in a boating accident. The dreams continued. Vivid nightmares of people I know perishing to the other side. Every dream turned into some kind of forewarning of what was to come. Always him, always a new funeral wreath, always the smile. The creep worked some kind of black magic on me when he gave me his ring. I tried telling my friends and family that we were entertained the Grim Reaper himself, and he was punishing me with these visions because I wouldn't fall for his con. Everything has a price, even entertainment. I didn't even know I was giving up anything. I guess I got swindled after all. The group that went with me had no recollection of the gold-painted man with a jester hat on his head. What they did remember is me getting into a rather large argument with a stranger about the origins of voodoo, and screaming that the natives of New Orleans' beliefs are based loosely on fairy tales, and that I apparently offended a lot of people. Even if that was the case, no one could tell me how the ring came to be on my finger. The video that I thought I had recorded when he was hustling the elderly couple had disappeared from my phone. The first professional I saw for the prophetic dreams told me I worked too hard, and maybe I needed to take some time off and stay away from alcohol. They had me complete all these different tests to prove that I was in my right mental state. In the midst of it, no one could get this stupid ring off my finger. By the time I got to the fight professional, I was told that maybe I should just keep my intrusive thoughts to myself. And death was a part of life, and try to live in a normal manner. I see death. I don't want to see it, but I still was able to see it all the same. I was cursed by a New Orleans jester, all because of the difference of opinions. If only I could go back, I would have definitely said no to that first drink and kept a clear head the entire, instead of being doomed to a room of padded walls because everyone thinks I lost my mind. Here I was, safe. But let's go back to the beginning. The cabin in the cave. The sun began to fade behind the gray, overcast plateau that Ethan was hunting on, and darkness began to take over the lonely Mesa de Blanco wilderness once more. It wasn't long ago when the already threatening sky had turned an angry, boiling, black color, and it had begun to rain down hectic sheets of bitter snowflakes and tiny shards of stinging ice. He squinted furiously around him, looking for any sign of the animal he was currently hunting. He had found some spore of the massive beast a little way back, and was a little surprised when he found out that the trail seemed to lead directly to the snow line of Mount Blanco, and then seemed to wind about the trees in the sparse forested areas. He knew its lair had to be nearby. Most people would have called the wilderness around the White Mesa beautiful, or serene, or perhaps breathtaking. But right now, in this bitter cold, he thought that maybe stark, bone-chilling, or bleak would better describe it. Ethan had seen this particular plot of God's good earth many times before, had wandered its trails, climbed its cliffs, waded its streams, and stalked its woods. It was referred to affectionately by most of the people in Ethan's profession as Greenhorn's Grave. It had been many years since he had been in this part of the Southwest, and for good reason. The game was sparse, and the land was inhospitable. The local townsfolk of Mesa Pueblo had sought out Ethan the last time he was at the local trading post selling his furs, and had told him of how, for the last 3.5 weeks, they have been tormented by a gigantic ghost cat, and that if there is anything he should not do, it would be to go out at night. Apparently, not soon after the last full moon, the livestock around the sleepy village of Mesa Pueblo started going missing. Large livestock. There were holes ripped through fences, and large tufts of white fur caught sticking to barbed wire, but no bodies were left behind. People started seeing the phantom cat ghosting about outside of town, and swore that it had glittering pink eyes. It loved killing livestock, but within a week, it had started targeting children. Any poor child wandering too far away was very liable to be snatched up, especially during night hours. There was very little blood. Apparently, the giant wildcat was taking all of this food back to its lair to eat the majority of it, and leaving nothing behind. It was the largest animal any of the people had ever seen, even larger than a grizzly in size, but only short glimpses had ever been seen of it so far. There was no noise made when it attacked, not even from its victims. The majority of the people of Mesa Pueblo were elderly and children, with scarcely a man between 15 to 50. They said they would like to buy Ethan's services and have him hunt down the giant ghost cat. The prospect of hunting this dangerous and legendary game, albeit in the unforgiving Mesa de Blanco region, intrigued Ethan. And to think of what price the pelt would sell for when the deed was done. It seemed like a profitable situation, but only a fool jumps headlong into the dark. So he quickly went about gathering more information about this incredible beast. Most people were too scared to say anything useful. But a boy on a ranch on the eastern outskirts of town said he saw it, and could even draw how big it was. Ethan watched in stunned silence as the boy pulled out a piece of charcoal and started making long, hard lines along the wall of one of the outer barns. When the boy was done drawing, he wiped his brow and stepped back to admire his work. On the peeling barn wall was the outline of an enormous cougar, and the height of its shoulder went above Ethan's head. The kid wasn't a bad artist, Ethan had to admit, but the thing was way too big. Really, kid? You must be joking. That's bigger than a bear. The kid emphatically shook his head in the negative, then threw his hand toward the wall to emphasize his work. Grande fantasma gatto, espiritu gatto, the boy exclaimed. But when Ethan shook his head, the boy sighed dramatically in exasperation, and then grabbed the cuff of his jacket and led him to the other side of the barn. There is where he saw the paw print the enormous cougar had left behind in the mud. Ethan's foot easily fit in it. Ethan was no small man. When Ethan returned to Trading Post, a few eager locals looked up hopefully, wondering if he would take the job. "I'm going to need an advance," stated Ethan. He was going to use some of the advance to upgrade his old equipment. Ethan's current arms didn't have enough power to do the job, and they also had distinctive quirks that made firing them extremely dangerous in life or death situations. If he was going to do the job, he was going to do it right. A few minutes later, after meeting with the elder chief and obtaining the advance, Ethan was at the local gun shop. Old Bessie was an aging scattergun, well beyond her years of useful service. She was traded for the largest caliber rifle they had, a Winchester Model 1886, chambered to fire a .50 caliber Buffalo killing round. It held 9 rounds in a rotating clip, and he was sure it would be able to put out the firepower he would need to put it down. If not with one shot, maybe 2. The gun shop owner wouldn't even hardly look at the worn Colt Patterson he was carrying. Cap and ball were frowned upon these days. So, he decided to keep the old .36 caliber as another backup. When Ethan started haggling over the price of the Colt 45 Single Action Army 45 SAA, the shopkeeper just put her hands meaningfully around his hands, which were still holding the gun, and said, "Tu mantienes," Ethan grunted in response. "Fine, but I'm just borrowing it. Do you have bullets?" "Oh, and gunpowder." An hour or so later, and Ethan had found lodgings at a homestead around the west side of town, in the area where most of the sightings happened, and at a place which had been devastated by the ghost cat. Grandma Theodora Ecketts ran a pretty decent operation, breeding horses. Her business had recently come crashing down when Phantasmagoto had started hauling off her male studding stallions in the middle of the night. Now she only had a couple of foals and a mare or 2 to her name. Her work hands and her daughter wouldn't leave her, however. They said they never would, no matter how bad it got. The ranch was their life. Grandma Ecketts wasn't complaining. In fact, she was in a cheery mood since she found out Ethan was going to be staying with them because she had another person to cook for. She at once proclaimed Ethan too skinny and went about filling his plate with all sorts of tender meats, all seasoned perfectly and cooked to perfection. Ethan had excused himself after dinner and went out back to sight in his weapons. He placed several cans and bottles on various posts around the main barn area, and then cut a circle in the side of the barn itself to serve as some basic targets. The trapper smiled to himself as he began to twirl the .45 Colt SAA around his right index finger. Then he twirled it a little faster. Then he switched hands and continued to twirl with his left, all in one fluid motion. Then suddenly, the gun ceased moving and the barrel aimed directly at the nearest bottle. Ethan fired from the hip, and the bullet cored into the fence post below the target bottle. He fired again, and it went wide. On the third shot, the bottle exploded. Ethan finished with a last twirl and replaced the SAA in its shiny new hip holster, all in one smooth movement. Clapping could be heard from behind him, and then a low whistle. Ethan turned to see Grandma Eckett's beautiful daughter, Christina, standing there, hands on her hips, half smile on her lips. Standing next to her was Jose, the ranch's youngest occupant, and he was holding onto the top of his cowboy hat with one hand and had an astonished look on his face. Jose's mouth hung open, revealing crooked teeth. "Nice shootin' there, stranger. That bottle didn't know what was coming. And what fancy gunplay," said Christina. "He is like some gunslinger straight from the Wild West." "How did you do that, mister?" wondered Jose aloud. Ethan shrugged. "I have a lot of time on my hands, and not a terrible lot of things to fill it with. This calms my nerves." "Let's see it again, mister. Shoot something else." Ethan nodded, then turned back to the targets, standing stock still. He stood there for a good 10 seconds, lasting until the tension could be snapped with a knife. Ethan pulled out the age 36 Colt revolver, quicker than it takes a bolt of lightning to hit the ground, right-handed, and fired 3 times in a row. 2 cans and a bottle met their untimely demise. "Amazing!" cried Jose, visibly awed. "Well now, with shootin' like that, we sure don't have nothin' to worry about as far as that white cougar that's been prowlin' around, eatin' our people and cattle." "Where'd you learn to do that?" wondered Christina, quite astonished at the impressive display of marksmanship. "My father, some. I taught most of it to myself." "Really? Really like a gunslinger," said a woozy Jose, the excitement getting to him a little and making him stumble. "I got a sight in the rifle now," said Ethan, pulling the Winchester 1886 out of the holster on his back. He worried over it a bit before kneeling down and aiming at the round circle he cut into the barn. It wasn't long at all before he fired. 3 times. The sound was deafening. "Holy cow, mister! I never heard nothing so loud in my life." Ethan offered the gun to Jose. "Want to try? I'm warning you, though. It kicks like an ornery mule." Jose shook his head emphatically. No. To witness such perfection was enough. Ethan walked over to the barn and examined his shots. They were closely grouped, lower down, and slightly to the left of center in the circle. It was almost full dark before Ethan was satisfied enough with his arms to go inside and turn in. Now he was out here on the snowy and desolate Mesa de Blanco Plateau, with only his guns for company. And he was stalking an enormous albino cougar through the unforgiving wilderness, and Ethan's prey was a proven man-eater. If it spotted Ethan first, he was sure that he wouldn't even hear the damn thing at all before it had its fang-ridden mouth around his neck. The struggle would be brief. Then it would most likely haul Ethan's bloody corpse back to its lair to munch on at its own leisure. Grim thought that. Still, he was sure he could put the monster down with a good shot or two from the .50 caliber Winchester rifle. It really all came down to who saw the other first. But Ethan was also beginning to worry about the weather. It was starting to snow even harder, and the wind was picking up. With full dark right around the corner, getting caught out in a storm like this could be quickly fatal. He trudged through the icy, blinding snow, eager to find some kind of shelter, or, at worst, a large snowbank he could dig his way into and spend the night. Ethan quickly came up against an impassable, nearly vertical cliff wall, and he skirted along it arbitrarily to the left, keeping the cliff within arm's length to his right. Ethan stoically made it about another half-mile before finding the going almost impossible and the visibility worse than nil. The cold was making his limbs and face very numb, and it was getting harder to move with every strenuous, aching step. Then, like a shining beacon of blessed hope, Ethan managed to catch a glimpse of what appeared to be some kind of torchlight, and it couldn't be farther than 20 feet away. Even in this hellish storm, he was sure he could make it. Ethan stumbled into a cave not a moment too soon, his strength about to completely give out. A cozy series of somber lanterns were lit along the left cave wall, hanging from studs nailed into support posts or sitting ensconced in cleverly made recesses notched into the rock wall. The cave was unusually warm and inviting, at least when compared to outside. It seemed to have been mostly man-made and was almost smooth. Such was the care that had been made when the tough, mineral-streaked rock had been picked at and blasted thoroughly by dynamite, by at least several men for a very, very long time. Not far in, maybe about 50 yards from the cave entrance, and relieved to be out of the storm, Ethan came upon a quaint mining shack. Its wooden planks built right into the side of the shaft itself. The door to the shack was wide open and was hanging at a severe angle, nearly off its hinges. Ethan also noticed there were some scratches on the wall near the door jamb, but his brain was becoming foggy, and it didn't completely register. He was just so awfully cold and tired. There had to be some kind of boa or chair in that old shack that he could sleep on just for a little while until the storm passed and daybreak came. The weary trapper stumbled into the cabin and ineffectually tried to close the broken door behind him. He soon gave up and looked around the room in slumped lethargy. It was dim in here. Only one low-lit lantern on a makeshift wooden table in the center of the room. There was only one other piece of furniture, which was a tattered cot in the corner of the room. But at least it seemed to be roomy enough to sleep two normal-sized men comfortably. Ethan put the rifle down in a clumsy motion on the center table, then lurched over to the bed in order to lie down. He had barely gotten his boots off and leaned his head back on the straw-filled pillowcase before he drifted off into a deep, seemingly endless sleep in which no dreams came. The last thing Ethan noticed before entering the warm sea of immeasurable darkness was that the bed smelled alarmingly like cat urine. Ethan awoke to find a half-ton of murderous, purring feline on top of his chest, apparently not shy to use Ethan as a bed warmer, sleeping the night away peacefully on what felt like a very full stomach. I should have known better, Ethan thought bitterly, as he eyed the massive canines poking awkwardly out of a foul-smelling cat jaw, not inches from his face. He could see tiny bits of meat still stuck in its oversized fangs. It didn't look like it could close its monstrous overbite. And right now, the thing was sawing logs away in a loud and sonorous, purring rumble that vibrated Ethan's chest. Its eyes were closed. Maybe. His arms were pinned to his side, and he knew he wouldn't be able to reach the SAA with either hand because the holster was in the wrong place to grab it under the mass of white fur and teeth that nearly smothered him. The rifle was a no-go, not until he got this cat off him. The .36 Patterson, however, Ethan drew the .36 in one smooth, slow motion of his right hand, barely even rustling the beast cougar's shaggy fur coat before thrusting the barrel into the cat's side and firing off 3 shots as fast as he could. The effect was instantaneous, loud, and very bloody. The cougar leapt to its feet and staggered off the bed before jumping back in shock. It knocked over the table and sent the rifle and lantern crashing to the floor, shattering it and leaving a burning puddle of kerosene. The enormous ghost cat faced Ethan with its bulbous, pink, glittering eyes, staring hatefully at him through the haze of gun smoke from the .36. It kept its wounded side carefully toward the rocky cave wall. Ethan wiped warm cougar blood off his bearded face. This was going to get ugly. It was somewhat dim in the cabin, the only light coming in through the broken door and the tiny lake of fire burning in the center of the room. And the shadows abounded, merged and commingled in a dizzying fashion. Ethan pulled the .45 single-action Army from its holster and aimed it directly at the snarling beast's skull with deadly precision and a steady arm. "Good night, Espiritu Gato," said Ethan under his breath as he pulled the trigger. Thunder boomed. Later that morning, a bedraggled, snow-studded Ethan stumbled back into town. The townsfolk gasped when they saw how his leathers were slashed deeply by what looked like a monstrous beast's paw. On the trapper's broad shoulders was the pelt of a giant, white, now docile cougar that would forever be remembered in Mesa Pueblo as Espiritu Gato, the midnight ghost cat that was slain by the lone trapper Ethan in mortal combat, finally bringing peace to a beleaguered town. The flash, "You're lucky to be alive, Mr. Henderson." They all told me that. Every doctor, nurse, and specialist that came into my hospital room. God, I remember that much. And they weren't wrong. I had flew right out of the windshield of my buddy Dave's car. I hardly remember the night or the accident, but I know we had been drinking, and he was driving. We crashed into another driver at an intersection. No one else survived. I remember waking up the next morning to the beeping of a heart monitor. I remember the look on my wife Rachel's face, her eyes swollen and red from crying, and her telling me over and over again how she thought she was going to lose me. She wasn't in the car with us, and I was thankful for that, because that's the day she told me she was pregnant with our first. I truly was lucky to be alive, and I swore up and down to her that day that I was going to be the husband she deserved. We had hardly been married a year at that point, and I had already messed up so much. But that day, I changed. I made it my life goal for Rachel to always know how much I loved and appreciated her. I went out on less guys' nights and let her go out for more girls' nights. I helped clean the house and cooked dinner on days she worked late. When our second child was born, I took time off work to be with her and help her. When a promotion for her meant more hours, I quit my job to stay home with the kids while she built her career. And I loved every minute of it. Watching the kids grow up into people gave me so much joy. I knew how lucky I was. But when Rachel would come home after a long day to a hot meal waiting on the table for her, and hearing her say, "How did I get so lucky, Sean?" Nothing beats that. My family meant the world to me, and anything I could do to make their lives better made me happy. When the kids, Leah and Robbie, got a bit older, and both were in elementary school, I decided it was time for me to go back to work. I took a job in construction, building things with my hands. Work I could be proud of. It paid off, too, because over the years, I was able to renovate our own home. It was a slow process, doing it myself, one room at a time. At one point, I was sure Rachel was going to divorce me. When the back patio project took a bit longer than I had anticipated and left us without a back door for a couple weeks. But she sure has enjoyed the backyard since then. Their smiles were all I needed to keep going with these projects. Leah got her own ensuite bathroom. For Robbie, a gaming den in the basement. And Rachel had her dream kitchen. 10 years after we bought the house, it looked completely different. I was proud of the life, the family, and the home I had built. I truly was the luckiest man alive. Or so I thought, until the headaches started. The first one happened one evening when I was making dinner. It was just Robbie and I home. Rachel was working late, and Leah was at rehearsals for her high school's play. I was making my famous coq au vin, a dish that took a while to prepare, since I had the extra time. Robbie was sitting at the island doing his homework, so he had to witness the whole thing. I had turned on the oven light so I could take a peek inside, which I guess triggered it. I remember thinking the light was so bright, brighter than usual. And then, nothing. I blacked out. It was only for a couple minutes, but it was enough to spook poor Robbie. I could hear him shouting, "Dad! Dad!" I got up off the floor and reassured him that I was okay. Later, during dinner, when we were discussing what had happened, I could see that Rachel was concerned. She wanted me to go see the doctor, but I insisted I was fine. She made the kids, and I promise that if this ever happened again, we'd call an ambulance, or at least make a doctor's appointment. The second time it happened, it was maybe about 6 weeks later. I was at a job site, and a coworker turned on a floodlight. I could see it getting brighter, and this time I heard a blaring noise, but couldn't make out where it was coming from. Everything went black, and I could hear him shouting my name. He told me I was out for only around 5 or 10 minutes. Again, I insisted I was fine, but my boss gave the rest of the day off anyway and told me to take the following day, too, if I needed it. Not wanting to worry Rachel, I chose not to tell her about it. And like an idiot, I didn't make a doctor's appointment. I went to work the next day and felt great. It was a few months before it happened again. And this time, I couldn't hide it from Rachel, because she was there when it happened. It was late, the kids were in bed, and Rachel and I were in the living room. We had just finished watching a movie, and she got up to turn on the lamp. I could hear her talking about the movie, but I was fixated by the light. It got brighter, and I was trying to figure out if it had just moved or if it was my imagination when the noise started. "What is that noise?" I tried to ask her, but I don't know if all the words came out before it all went black again. When I came back to, Rachel was already on the phone with an ambulance dispatcher. I managed to calm her down enough to agree that the ambulance wasn't necessary, on the condition that I would call our doctor the next morning to make an appointment. Luckily, the dispatcher was on my side, or else I don't think she would have went for it. As promised, I called to make an appointment first thing the next morning. It was scheduled for less than a week away, but I didn't make it until then, before it happened for the last time. All I remember is waking up in the middle of the road and not being able to see anything except bright headlights from a car. My ears were ringing, and the sound of the car horn was fading in and out. I think I heard an ambulance siren and someone calling my name before blacking out again, but it was hard to be sure. When I woke up again, I was in a hospital bed. There was a woman sitting in a chair who looked angry, or maybe annoyed, and it wasn't until she spoke that I even realized it was Rachel. She looked different. Her hair was darker and shorter. I thought I must have been in a coma for a while, and she let her roots grow in. "Welcome back," she told me, but her welcome didn't sound warm. I asked her if I had been in a coma, and she laughed a little before quickly suppressing it. "No, Sean, you were not in a coma." "Ah, Mr. Henderson, there you are." A nurse bustled into the room. "I hope you'll stay with us this time." "What?" I looked at Rachel, who just stared at me, emotionless. "You've been in and out, mostly out, of consciousness for a few hours now," the nurse explained. "Your wife is a lucky lady to still have you here. The luckiest girl alive," Rachel responded, deadpanned. The nurse didn't seem to notice Rachel's lack of enthusiasm and went on to tell me that there were no broken bones or anything major beyond some bruising, and I could likely go home the following morning. Going home is when things really started to not make sense. For one, none of the renovations were done. It was like it was when we first bought it, which prompted me to ask Rachel if I had a job. "You're joking, right?" She laughed, but didn't answer the question. I was starting to wonder if I had somehow traveled back in time, but my hypothesis was debunked when Robbie came in the front door. He looked about the same as I remembered, except that there was about another 20 pounds of him. He asked Rachel if she could drive him to hockey practice. "You play hockey?" I asked him. Yeah. Mom told me about your accident, but said you were okay. You don't have amnesia or anything, do you?" No, not to worry, Robbie. I'm doing fine. Just a little fuzzy." "Cool," he nodded. "It's just Rob now, though. Mom are you ready to go? I'm going to be late. Where is your sister? I asked, but quickly remembered she probably had rehearsals. Who knows? Rachel sighed. Probably off with that scumbag boyfriend of hers again. I hate that kid's face. He's such a loser. I don't know what she even sees in him. Let's go, Rob. Boyfriend. Boyfriend? I mumbled to myself as the door closed behind them, leaving me behind in a house that didn't feel like my own. What kind of alternate reality am I in? Am I dreaming? Is this a prank? When no one came out from behind a fake wall with cameras, I decided that it was not, in fact, a prank, and that I needed to look to information, clues, something to tell me just what in the heck was going on here. It was getting dark, and I hadn't found anything except our legitimate birth certificates, tucked away in an old photo album. Some memories I had, and others I didn't. I decided to cook up a quick pasta for everyone, but Rachel and Robbie, or Rob, stopped for burgers on their way home, and Leah didn't get in until hours later. When I asked her where she'd been, she just gave me a look and went upstairs. Why didn't you back me up? I asked Rachel. It's not worth the energy to argue with her, she responded without looking up from her phone. I went for a walk to try to clear my head, which didn't work. And when I came back, Rachel was already in bed. I don't know if she was sleeping or just pretending to not notice when I slid under the blanket beside her and said goodnight. In the morning, I got up before everyone else and made breakfast, a feeble attempt to make things normal. Robbie, or Rob, was the only one who seemed to appreciate it. Oh, sweet, he said, loading a plate with enough bacon, eggs, and pancakes to feed an orphanage. Leah nibbled on a piece of toast, and Rachel just sipped her coffee, looking unimpressed. Okay, off to school. I can't drive you today. I have a meeting. Again, Mom, Leah whined. I hate public transit. People who take the bus are disgusting. If you want me to take you, then we have to leave now. I can take you, I offered, feeling semi-confident in my ability to drive during my current confused state. How are you going to drive if Mom has the car? She narrowed her eyes at me. I hadn't given any thought about whether I still had my truck. Trying to ignore her attitude, I changed the subject. So, when is your play? I didn't miss it, did I? What play? The one you're in at school. What is it again? Annie? Or was that last year? It's Matilda this year, right? Oh, you mean the school's stupid play? I know you, like, hit your head or whatever. But you seriously thought I'm one of those theater nerd kids? She tossed her half-eaten toast on the table and walked away. I'll be in the car. Good one, Dad, Rob B. said, shoveling the rest of what was on his plate into his mouth with a fork. You get in the car, too, Rachel told him, pouring her coffee into a travel mug. Rob B. grabbed his backpack and headed out. "Wait," I called after Rachel before she left the room. "What is happening here? Everything is different, but no one else seems to think so, and you don't even seem upset that I was just in an accident." She rolled her eyes. "Upset? I was upset the first time, Sean. But I'm on to you now. If you want to leave this family, then do it. But don't tell me that I'm the one who's different. And for God's sake, don't be such a coward. What are you talking about?" Now I was really confused. "What do you mean the first time? When I was in the accident with Dave, before the kids. You weren't in an accident before the kids were born. Oh my God, I can't do this again. Right now, I'm going to be late." She turned to leave, but I grabbed her arm. "Tell me," I demanded. "You really don't remember?" She scoffed. I loosened my grip, and she jerked away from me. "A couple months ago, you started talking about going back and drove our car into a tree. Seemed like an accident at the time, but now I can see you were really trying to off yourself. Pretty sure that's what this is all about now, too." I just blinked at her. I didn't know what to say or think. She straightened her jacket and lifted her purse over her shoulder. "Look, Sean, I don't know what's going on with you, and frankly, I just don't have the energy anymore. You need to get help. You think you aren't where you're supposed to be, and I get that. I do. But you have to accept that this is your life, and it's what you make it." She sighed heavily, and I could feel her exasperation. "I don't want you here anymore," she continued. "Please pack your things up. I have a really long day today, and I don't want to see you here when I get home. I don't care where you go. I don't care if you kill yourself. I just want you gone." And that was it. Just like that, she walked out the door. I heard the car start and drive away. I stood there. I don't know for how long, trying to process what little information I had from that brief interaction. I couldn't make heads or tails of any of it, but I knew one thing for certain. I had to get back to Rachel, and my family. A deer, a sign, and a tree prologue. The buck emerged from the line of pine trees, sniffed the warm fall air for any danger. He then strode across the mist-covered, grassy field, eyeing the weeds growing along the fence line. As he chomped on the weeds and grasses that grew along the wire fence next to the road, it failed to notice the timber rattlesnake that had been resting in the weeds as well. When the buck's hoof stepped on the rattler, the snake struck out and bit the leg. Once and again, the buck reared back and kicked at the snake. The buck then began to walk away, but only made it a few steps before the poison took effect. Its legs became stiffer, then stopped moving altogether. As the buck heart stopped, the buck tripped into the fence, knocking over one of the fence posts and a good portion of the fence as well. Attached to the fence post had been a no trespassing sign. The road, Beatty Ave, next to the field, was rarely used, so the buck simply decomposed into the ground. Life carries on. 2 years would pass, and the buck had all but disappeared when David drove his delivery van down Beatty Ave. His mind was not on work, but on the loss of his wife and mother of their 3 boys, just a few months prior. Now working 2 jobs to keep the boys in the same house until the insurance company paid him what he was due. David looked at the row of Christmas trees in the field across the road. Like a tsunami, dread flooded his brain. This would be the first Christmas without Kathy. David had been dreading this time. Everyone told him the boys were young and would be fine. He would have to make a list of things to buy the boys over the next couple of months, decorate the house. Would he have to make cookies, as Kathy did with the boys? Or maybe he could ask his mother or mother-in-law to help. They were both always offering help in any way. His mind filled with thoughts of Christmas. He missed the turn off Beatty Ave to where the packages he needed to deliver. Cursing himself, he had to drive an additional 2 miles to find a driveway to turn around in and get back en route. Stay awake and pay attention, old boy. The last thing you need is to get into an accident, he said aloud to himself. David made his delivery and took his time walking back to his truck, taking deep breaths of the cool country air to clear his head. Putting his seatbelt on, he made the decision to call the grandmothers, and hard as it may be, ask for their help. He felt good after coming to this decision. With their help, it would be a good Christmas for the boys and himself. Driving back down Beatty Ave, he let his eyes wander over the row of pine trees again. This time, no tsunami of dread, but one of happiness. He slowed his truck to a stop when he saw a cardinal bouncing from limb to limb on one tree. David's mind seemed to relax for the first time since Kathy's death. After completing his deliveries, David returned home and immediately called his mother and then Kathy's mother. Both were thrilled to help. Over the next 2 months, the mothers talked to each other and made a schedule of when cookies would be baked and the tree put up. The boys were very excited to be spending time with the grandparents. Both grandfathers, after finding out what was going on, joined in. It was building up to be a good Christmas. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, David loaded the boys in a truck he had borrowed from his brother and headed out. After 20 minutes of dancing around questions from the boy about where they were going, why did they need Uncle Jack's truck? David pulled over to the side of road next to the field of Christmas trees. "What are we doing here?" asked the oldest, Tommy. "Well, I think we need a tree, don't we?" David asked with a big smile on his face. All 3 boys looked out the window at the field of trees and began to cheer. Chad, the youngest, began making chopping motions with his hands. "Can I cut first?" he asked with a huge smile pinned to his face. "Here's the plan." David told his boys, "I was thinking we'd dig up the tree and bring it back home. Then, after Christmas, we can plant it in the backyard. What do you think?" "Mommy always loved Christmas trees," Chad said, still holding the smile on his face. But tears were gathering in his eyes. David could feel the mood in the truck change with Chad's statement. He inadvertently popped the happy balloon. He had to say something to bring joy and happiness back. "Yes," she did. "That is why I thought we could bring one home and keep it all year in the backyard," he said quickly, hoping this would help. Bill, the middle child, broke the silence when he pointed to the largest tree and announced they should bring that one home. The other two boys cheered in agreement. "I love your idea." All David could get out before the boys were out of the truck and running across the field towards the large tree. David chuckled to himself and went to the back to pull out the shovels and wheelbarrow, then followed the boys through the field. The boys were basically dancing around the tree they had chosen, even though it was at least 12 feet tall and wider than Uncle Jack's pickup. "Boys, boys." David had to call several times to get their attention. "That tree is way too tall to even fit into the truck, let alone in the house. We can just trim some off the bottom to make it fit," Tommy said, looking up and down the tree. "Even if we could make it fit, there is no way the four of us can carry it to the truck." "Buddy, I was thinking of this one." David pointed to the tree he had seen the cardinal in a few months ago. "It's kind of small," Chad announced, looking from the large tree to the smaller one his dad was standing next to. "Yeah, Dad, Chad is nearly as tall as that one," Tommy added. "We can put it on a table in the living room," Dived improvised. "Plus, digging this one out is going to hard enough." Tommy shook his head, then clapped his brothers on the shoulders. David geared himself up for a fight with Tommy. Since Kathy's death, Tommy seems to have decided he was suddenly a man and didn't need to be told anything by his father. "Come on, guys. Dad's right, that one will be easier to dig up and carry to the truck," Tommy said, shocking his father. The boys and their day spent the next hour digging and pulling on the tree to free it from its grasp on terra firma. Moving to the new tree to and into the truck took an additional 15 minutes. On their way home, they stopped by a gardening center to get new soil and a large yellow planter. Yellow was their mom's favorite color. While shopping, Chad explained to the salesperson the pot was to put their mother in for Christmas, and then put her in the backyard. David had to quickly explain exactly what they were doing. The salesperson smiled and laughed and stated she understood. When they arrived home, David and the boys moved the tree to the edge of the truck edge. They removed burlap they had wrapped around the roots. David instructed them to pull off the earth from the roots before they put it into the new pot. He then went inside to clean up and start making dinner. David had just started browning the meat when Tommy ran inside. "Dad! Dad, Dad!" he called, running into the kitchen. David pulled the pan off the burner and looked at his son. "Look what we found on the tree." Tommy had 3 small, whitish objects in his hand. "What are those?" David asked, whipping his hand on his shirt, then picking up one of the objects. "Looks like a stone, but didn't feel as heavy as it should have. I think they're finger bones," Tommy said, with a serious, straight face. "You see, the bigger one goes right here on your fingers." Tommy placed the longer of the bones on his finger between the first and second knuckle. "Well, Dr. Leet, you may be right," David said, with a little more concern in his voice than he meant to. "How many did you find?" "Just these 3, Tommy replied. "Tommy, we found some more funny stones," screamed Bill from the garage. David grabbed the remaining bones from Tommy's hand and put them on the kitchen counter, then pushed Tommy towards the garage. Once back in the garage, standing at the back of the truck, Chad was holding a hand full of bones that looked just like the ones Tommy had brought him. "Okay, boys," David said, looking outside the garage to see if anyone had heard Bill screaming his announcement. Not seeing anyone, he ushered the boys inside. "Let's get washed up for dinner now." "But Dad, we're not done yet," Chad mentioned as he pulled another clod of dirt off the root ball. David paused. "It will be easier once the dirt is all dried out." During dinner, David was quiet as the boys chatted endlessly while eating tacos. Halfway through dinner, David excused himself and took his cell phone into the living room. When he came back into the kitchen, he addressed the boys. "Guys," David started, then took a deep breath before continuing. "Don't be." David's mind went blank. He wasn't sure how to continue. "What the matter, Dad?" Tommy asked through a mouthful of tacos. "No easy way to say this," David bravely started, then immediately faltered, looking in the faces of his sons. "Okay, here it is. The special rocks you found today, cleaning out the roots of the tree. I think they are bones from fingers." Tommy, who had made the discovery, was not surprised. Bill looked at his fingers as if the bones might be his own. Chad took advantage of everyone else being occupied and grabbed the last taco. 20 minutes later, a police cruiser, followed by an unmarked police car, pulled into the driveway. Over the next hour, the 2 police officers examined the root ball, while a crime scene detective collected the found bones and searched the roots for more. The detective had taken David into the living room to speak to him. Tommy, Bill, and Chad stood in the driveway and watched the police working. David came out a short time later and, without speaking to the boys, walked over to the neighbor's house and returned with the neighbor, Mrs. Atwell. "Boys, I need to go with the detective, and I'll be back. Until Mrs. Atwell is going to watch over you. I want you on your best behavior until I get back." Bill was the only one who responded. "Okay, you be good too," which brought a smile to David's face. The police finished collecting the bones and searching for the tree ball. They took the 2 shovels used by the family to dig up the tree, and then they left. It was after dark before David returned and collected his children and took them home. Over a pizza dinner, he told them he had taken the detective to the field where they dug up the tree. He explained that they had sort of illegally took the tree, but the detective said not to worry about it, and we could keep the tree. The 2 younger boys cheered. 3 days later, the detective called David back and explained they had found a complete skeleton in the hole they had removed the tree from. A forensic anthropology team responded and determined the body had been buried between 50 and 60 years ago. David expressed his thanks to the detective and said he would think about how to break it to his sons. David heard the detective take a deep breath, then explained he will have to do it sooner than later. While on site, the detectives found 7 more bodies buried under tress in the field. The field used to belong to a notorious mafia associate. The detective believed the bodies in the field were victims of mob hits. The news has already caught wind of the story, so they may be showing up for interview with the man who broke so many open homicide cases. Now it was David's turn to take a deep breath. He thought of Kathy and smiled to himself. She always had a way of making him forget bad things. Thursday night. Rain pattered on the roof of Grandma's house as Christine settled in after Thanksgiving dinner. She sat on the plush carpet and started playing solitaire on the coffee table. Mom was hollering at the football game, but Christine was doing her best to tune that out. Grandma was in the kitchen, finishing the dishes. Dinner itself had been the usual stuff: turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, green beans. It was a nicer, heartier meal than Christine usually ate. Now she was pleasantly full, enjoying her cards and the relative peace and quiet. Why are the Lions attempting a field goal? Mom roared, jumping up. She bumped the coffee table and fell back onto the couch. The game went to commercial. Oh, Christine sighed heavily, picking up her fallen cards. "Sorry, kid," her mother said, rubbing her sore knee. "You know how it is." Christine nodded. It was always like this with football and true crime for some reason. She was glad it was only Mom here being noisy instead of the whole family. Grandma stepped into the living room, wiping her hands off on a towel. She hung it on the back of one of the wooden chairs at the little dining table on the opposite side of the room from Christine and Mom. "I wish you'd let us help you," Mom said. "Dishes would have been done a lot sooner." No, Grandma said. "After being away for so long, I almost missed doing my own dishes. Besides, there weren't that many." "I tried to get the older kids to come," Mom said. The game was back on, so her eyes were on the TV as she spoke. But they had other plans. In-laws, I guess. And you know how Dad is. With this last remark, she gave Christine a joking slap on the shoulder. Christine was glad her father and siblings weren't there. When they all got together, they talked too loud, and it would get too hot, and they would pick on and embarrass her. No, she much preferred this little get-together. "I keep telling you it's fine," Grandma said. She sat on the opposite end of the couch so that Christine was between them. She smiled at Christine. "It's kind of neat that we have 3 generations here," Christine nodded, smiling. "Touchdown!" Mom yelled and jumped up again, narrowly avoiding the coffee table this time. Thud. "Oh, for the love of..." Grandma cut herself off. "What did you knock over this time? I hope you haven't broken anything." "Shh." Mom held a finger to her lips and whispered, "That wasn't me. I think it came from outside." Grandma leaned back on the couch and put her feet up. "Probably just the rain, then." "Right," Mom said. She seemed unsure, but she sat back down and was quickly reabsorbed in the game. Christine hesitated, card in hand. "Grandma," she asked. Her voice always came out softer than she expected. "Are you sure it's nothing?" "Of course," Grandma said proudly. "After a month of running around Europe, staying in all kinds of places with all kinds of people, these little noises don't frighten me anymore." "Was it scary in Europe?" Christine asked. She had to repeat the question because of Grandma's hearing and Mom's hollering. When she finally got the question, she answered, "Oh, no. I had a few near misses, but that happens anywhere. Actually, I think you should go sometime. You'd like it." Christine smiled and went back to her cards. She had only placed 2 cards down when she heard another noise. Crash! Her head whirled toward the sound. She noticed Mom and Grandma do the same. Mom muted the TV and looked back at them. "You heard that too?" she asked in a hush. Grandma nodded. Mom patted her pockets. "Ugh, must have left my phone in the car," she said. She looked at Grandma. "Where's yours?" "My cell phone?" asked Grandma. "You know I can't keep track of that thing." Mom looked to Christine. Christine slid her phone out of her pocket and held up the black screen. "Why do you think I'm playing solitaire?" Mom dragged her hands down her face. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," Grandma said. "It's probably nothing. I'll go take a look." "No," Mom said. "You stay here with Christine while I go take a look. Do you still have my old baseball bat by the door?" Grandma rolled her eyes and gestured to it. Mom picked it up and gripped it tight. She tossed on her raincoat and bolted the door. "You two stay here. I'll have a look around the back. Be careful," Christine said. Mom laughed and ruffled her hair. "I will." She kissed Christine on the top of her head and went through the kitchen and out the back door. It was silent as they waited, listening. "The house isn't that big," Christine said, wringing her hands. "How long could it take to look around?" Grandma wrapped Christine up in her arms. "Your mom's just being dramatic, dear," she said. "She'll probably go out and search the whole woods before she's satisfied. What if there's something out there, like a bear, or a vampire, or a maniac with an axe? Christine cried into Grandma's shoulder. Grandma shook her head. Christine, where on earth would you get ideas like that? Christine pushed Grandma away and plopped down onto the couch. I know it's ridiculous. I'm just worried about Mom. After a pause, she added, and you know the only thing she loves more than football is true crime. I was practically raised by Keith Morrison. Christine and Grandma looked at each other, confirming to each other that they had both heard it. An unearthly groaning. It sounded close. Christine shot up from the couch. Something's happened to Mom. I just know it. Grandma grabbed her arm. Don't be rash, dear. Christine suddenly wished the rest of her family were here. No wild animal or axe murderer would attack such a large party. She wasn't sure if the same could be said for supernatural creatures, but maybe her sisters or brothers or father would know what to do about them. Christine tugged her arm free from Grandma's grip. I'm going after her. You can come with me if you want. What were we thinking, splitting up like this? That's how they always get you in horror movies. Christine pulled on her raincoat, flipped up the hood, and flung open the door. Lightning cracked. On the porch, a figure was silhouetted against the storm, carrying Mom, unconscious in its arms. Grandma cried out and rushed forward. Rain instantly soaked her to the bone. Christine ran out after her to help. Wait, the stranger said. It was a man. Stop! Give me back my daughter! Grandma shouted. She and Christine kept pulling on his arms, trying to free Mom from his clutches. Dorothy! The man cried out. They all paused at the mention of Grandma's name. Finally, the man huffed. Can we go inside so I can explain? Oh, Sean, I'm so embarrassed, Grandma said. They were all back in the living room. Mom was laid out on the couch with a compress on her head. Christine and the man, Sean, were sitting at the dining table. Grandma placed a steaming cup of tea in front of Sean. I didn't recognize you, Grandma continued. Sean chuckled. I don't blame you. Anyone would be nervous in this situation. Excuse me, Christine cut in. But, who are you? And what happened to Mom? Oh, Grandma said. This is Sean, dear. I met him while I was in England. He saved my life. She's exaggerating, Sean said. Not so, said Grandma. He pulled me out of the way, just as I was about to be hit by a bus. Sean sipped his tea demurely. I told him he could come by for a visit any time, Grandma said. I tried to call, but I never got any answer. I remembered she doesn't use her cell phone, so I decided to surprise her, Sean explained with another little chuckle. Oh, well, thank you for saving her, Christine said. And Mom? I found her just in front of the porch. She must have slipped off the step and hit her head. Christine sipped at her own tea, feeling silly. She was glad the whole thing was over. Thud. Christine, Grandma, and Sean all looked at each other. They had all heard the noise. Christine looked at Mom. She had rolled off the couch and was groaning as she climbed back up onto it. "Anyone know who won the game?" she asked. "Merry Christmas." "Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas." Jessica squints her eyes and bites down on her pinkish lower lip. "Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas." Jessica smiles, wrinkles forming around the corners of her mouth. She shakes her head down and chuckles. "Darling, what's the matter? What is going on in that big head of yours?" She gets up from her leather office chair and walks to her husband to squeeze his large, cold hands. Jessica's husband has never been so melancholy on December 24th. "I'm worried," he shares. "About what?" "Tonight." Jessica was alarmed by her husband's words. In the 4 centuries, her husband has been delivering presents and joy to children all around the world. She has never heard him say those words. What is there to worry about? The elves are organized. Everyone has been getting along. The reindeer are so excited for tonight and full of energy. Rudolph's nose is shining brighter than ever. I think we could shut off the headlights on the sleigh to save energy. Jessica, it's not that. Is it him? What? The Grinch? I do not know what he's up to right now. Jessica searches for the answer in her husband's eyes, but all she sees is her reflection. She drops his hands. "Now you are starting to worry me. You need to tell me what is going on," Jessica says sternly. "I simply do not know. I just feel unusual." "Is it me?" Jessica asks. Nicholas doesn't answer. "Mr. Claus? Mr. Claus?" Jeannie the elf asks aggressively. Nicholas perks up from his dazed state and looks around. All the elves have stopped their work activities to observe the overweight man, normally jolly, sulk in his sleigh. The elves exchange hushed whispers, coated in concern. Not only is this moment instilling fear in them, but the Christmas operation is running behind. "Why have you stopped? We need to get going. We need to be in New Zealand in 9 minutes," Nicholas yells. The elves shake at the thunderous volume of his voice and immediately finish packing the last few presents into his enormous red bag and feeding the reindeer their carrots. Nicholas has been delivering presents, or coal for the naughty children, for a few hours now. By the time Nicholas and the reindeer got to Amsterdam, Rudolph's nose was getting dimmer, and he was feeling slight fatigue. But they had to keep going. Nicholas was not singing holiday tunes as they flew in the crisp, frigid air in Croatia. He even dropped the wrong present, a gaming console, in the wrong house in Nigeria, and had to fly back to little Kemi's house to switch it with the correct one, a skateboard. The reindeer could sense the disorganization and gloominess from Nicholas. Nicholas knew that tonight was more delicate than usual. because he was making mistakes for the first time in centuries. His stomach was full of nerves and milk and cookies. 11:55 p.m. CST, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Nicholas rolls forward and lands on his feet in an upright position, like an Olympic gymnast. His chunky black boots leave faint imprints on the beige carpet. The Christmas lights are still on inside the Alotzi family home, providing light to guide him towards the Christmas tree. He places 3 gifts: a bicycle for Kechi, 8, a basketball hoop for Leon, 10, and a limited edition comic book for Josiah, 12. Nicholas smiles. A sense of peace washes over him, a feeling he has not felt all day. Josiah is the oldest, and he recently started to lose vision in his right eye. It has changed how he plays with his friends and how he learns his favorite subjects in school. But he was an exceptionally good boy this year. He deserves that comic book. That's what it's all about for Nicholas. Bringing joy to children. Nicholas looks around the cozy living room, looking for cookies and milk. With nothing in sight to quench his thirst or hunger, he walks towards the kitchen. This family is well off, he thinks to himself. Big white cabinets, stainless steel appliances, large square footage, pristine, clean, quiet. Milk and cookies wait for him on the large rectangular wooden dining table. Nicholas sips on the milk. He can see the family's new silver barbecue grill sitting outside the back door through the sliding door windows. The right side of the sliding door looked damaged. The white siding is bent and cracked, so much for pristine. As he put the tall glass of milk down, his head became hot. Sweat started to form from underneath his red hat. Something is not right, he thought. The milk was hot, steaming as if someone had just warmed it up just before he got there. Police! Put your hands where we can see them. Before Nicholas could turn around, he was tackled to the ground by an unknown man. Get off of me! He screams in agony. Nicholas, unable to lift his head to see ahead of him, hears more footsteps. An army of footsteps come from several positions in the kitchen. Doors swing open. Wooden chairs are toppled over. Bright flashlights illuminate his face. Nicholas feels his breath weaken and starts heaving. All right, officer. No need to suffocate him, a voice says. Nicholas feels a weight lift off his back and is finally able to lift his head. Officers dressed in thick, dark-colored bulletproof vests, masks, weapons, and boots surround the kitchen. St. Nicholas, you are under arrest for trespassing, breaking and entering, animal abuse, and violating the labor code. 2 officers appear beside him to bring him to his feet and start to cuff his hands behind his back. These are preposterous claims, Nicholas exclaims. Sir, anything you say may be used against you in court. You have the right to remain silent. I am not a criminal. I am Santa Claus. Nicholas wiggles frantically in his cuffs. If you arrest me, Millions of children will not get their Christmas presents. I need to finish my job. Can I speak to your superior? Who is responsible for placing these charges against me? A sinister silence comes. The officers turn their faces away from the now red-faced Nicholas towards a corner of the kitchen. The pantry, it opens with a creak, and a quiet, cold breeze sweeps through the kitchen. A trapped cry can be heard in the large pantry. Nicholas's eyes cannot believe what he is seeing. A mother, stepfather, and 3 kids, the Alozi family, are bound together, not with the joyful spirit of Christmas, but by dry, brown rope. Their mouths taped shut. Not a word from their lips, but their eyes do the talking. Desperation and fear reeks from the sweat that covers their heads. Nicholas screams and tries to free himself from the restraint of the handcuffs, but the officers hold him back. I wouldn't try that if I were you. A familiar voice sounds, but Nicholas cannot quite put a finger on it. The unknown figure's boots make loud thuds on the floor as they walk closer to Nicholas. The other officers part themselves like the Red Sea and make way for them. A cap shades her face in the low-lit kitchen, but Nicholas can make out her shiny, blonde hair. Cindy, she slowly lifts her head. Hello, Santa Claus? Cindy Lou, what is the meaning of all of this? Nicholas asks. Little Cindy Lou, who, from Whoville, sports a black jumpsuit and an unauthorized police badge. Her eyes are black with deceit and evil. A distant image from the small girl who loved Christmas. Cindy, please, remember the day the Grinch stole Christmas? How painful that was for you and your town. Imagine the millions of children experiencing the same thing this Christmas right now. Is that what you want? Nicholas pleads. Cindy leans closer to Nicholas. It's not about what I want, Klaus. Are these officers even legitimate? Cindy Lou, answer me. And why tie this poor family up on Christmas Eve? The eyes of the smallest Alozi child, Keiichi, beg for freedom. Actually, Cindy Lou checks her watch. It's Christmas Day, and it's about what he gets. Nicholas smells a grisly scent, and immediately his eyes open wide. A masked figure appears from a clump of officers. He gently removes his mask and reveals his skin, all green, and teeth, all yellow with termites. I should have known better, Nicholas whispers to himself. Merry Christmas, Santa Claus. Nicholas is enraged. Veins start to pop from his neck. Why so sad, Santy? What happened to the holly jolly fat man with a white beard that everyone knows and loves? Let me go, now. No, 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 no can do, Santy. Nicholas uses his large body to push the officers, if they even are real Canadian authorities, off him. They fall to the ground, but Nicholas is still surrounded by several angry officers, ready to take him down. Cindy waves her gloved finger, instructing the officers to pounce on Father Christmas. A struggle ensues. and Nicholas is forced to the ground again. He fights with all his will, yelling and kicking with the most power an almost 2,000-year-old man could. "Stop resisting," one officer demands. "You need to comply, sir," another one says. "Punch his fat belly if you need to. Or even better, kick his head," Cindy commands. Nicholas weakly lifts his head, and his fearful eyes drift towards the vile, green-skinned monster beside Cindy. He shows all his 55 crooked, revolting teeth. A bad banana. "Suspect has his hand on a weapon," the monster shouts. Nicholas furrows his bushy eyebrows in confusion. He thinks to himself, "I do not have my hand on a green Glock 17 appears between Nicholas's eyes, and it fierce with a deafening rumble. "Ho, ho, ho, Merry Christmas," the Grinch hollers. Paranoia. It was a cold November evening. Rain was showering on the street, creating a constant background noise. People ran from cover to cover, and residents of the building gathered near the window, admiring the incredible scenery outside. Except for Carl. Carl spent what seemed like an eternity examining his mug. His favorite mug, the mug he had for several years. Yet there was something strange with it. Using something for a long time, you remember small things about it. Little cracks, stains, tiny pieces of something edible that was stuck near the handle. It was there, but something was wrong. Just like if someone bought a brand new mug. "Hey, Carl, are you all right?" Jesus Christ. Carl got frightened and turned around, convulsively trying to control his hands and not to break anything. The mysterious voice belonged to his friend, Conrad, who stood in his kitchen with an anxious expression and a bottle of wine. Yes, I'm all right. It's just... Wait. How did you get into my apartment? You gave me the spare keys, remember? Conrad put the bottle on a table and proceeded with the conversation. "Are you sure you are all right? You look really concerned about something. I mean, people in your profession always look concerned, but today, it's a bit too much. What's going on?" "Yeah, no, it's nothing serious." Carl got 2 wine glasses in the kitchen and proceeded to sit at the table while trying to express his concerns. "It's just my mug. It doesn't look right." "Your mug?" Conrad was visibly surprised. "The one you have from college? The only thing that's not right about it is that I remember you holding your mug more than holding your ex-wife. I mean, that's why we got divorced." Carl laughed. "Not because of the mug, obviously, but you get the point." Carl realized he had forgotten about a wine opener and went to the kitchen to get it, while continuing his speech. "The point is, it's not like it should be. It's hard to explain. Something is not right. Maybe it's a little cleaner than usual, but something else is off too." "That happens to mugs when they get cleaned," Conrad said, trying to play it as a joke, but looking really concerned. Are you saying what I think you are saying? The room was silent for a moment. Carl was deep into his thoughts and unsure if he wanted to discuss it. But there is no better person to share his fears than Conrad. I mean, Carl began hesitantly. You know the country we live in, with all the secret police and repressions and all this stuff. What if they are spying on me? You are right about a country we live in. Conrad ate an olive and continued. And you know much better than I do about all the people that fell into paranoia and lost themselves in madness. No one was watching them. And no one is watching you, Carl. You just forgot that you washed the mug. Don't do this to yourself. Yeah, I guess you are right. I'm seriously, Carl. Don't do this to yourself. This country already lost too many good men to paranoia. We cannot lose you too. You are right. And I really mean it. Carl and Conrad smiled at each other and started the dinner. While you age, you tend to lose your friends. Not because something is wrong with you or with them, at least mostly, but because life drives you apart. You begin to work. They begin to work. You start a family. They start a family. Suddenly, you don't see each other anymore. You hardly know what is happening in each other's lives. And all your conversations are mostly wishing each other a Merry Christmas. That was not the case for Carl and Conrad. They were there for each other for as long as they can remember. They finished school together, lived together through college, and helped each other in all ways possible. Conrad was there when Carl got married and divorced. Even when they started to drift apart, they made a deal to gather every 2 weeks to drink some wine and catch up on what was going on in their lives. Carl knew he could trust Conrad and didn't lie when he said he would abandon all that spy paranoia. At least, he thought that. Soon after Conrad left, Carl poured himself some tea in the mug, the one that almost drove him crazy, went to his cabinet, and opened some documents he was working on. He opened a file, took a sip of tea, and wanted to start the work, but he still hesitated. He could not stop staring at the mug. Obviously, Conrad was right. The mug was the same as always. But Carl could not stop thinking that someone bought a new mug and tried to recreate the original one with cracks and stains. Was it paranoia? Certainly. But Carl knew one thing. He must do something to find out, or his mind will never be at peace again. That night, Carl put away his documents, finished the tea, and went to sleep. The following day, he bought a camera and hid it in the cabinet. If someone was there spying on him, they would return to the apartment. Days passed, and Carl sat in his cabinet each evening and watched videotapes from his camera. Nothing. Day after day, week after week. He did not tell Conrad anything about it, so as to not disappoint his friend. He knew that it was not healthy to to do something like that to yourself. But he couldn't stop. He promised to monitor it for a month, or a month and a half, and then stop. It was almost the deadline, if not counting the ones Carl already moved to later. He understood that he slowly lost control over his paranoia, and knew that it must come to an end. One more time. That's it. Carl committed to watching the very last tape from this camera, and there was nothing again. But something was off. Carl replayed the tape again and noticed what was bothering him. The timestamp skipped 3 seconds once. It may have been just a manufacturer error or problems with the power supply. But Carl still wanted to check for something. If he was right, someone might have erased part of the tape. In that case, they knew where the camera was because they saw how Carl hid it. He took his flashlight and tested it against his camera. Light reflected on the lenses and created small flares. If he was being watched, his apartment must contain other cameras. Carl knew that he was too deep into his paranoia, but could not resist himself. After all, if he found out he was right, that's not paranoia. He started flashing his apartment, inch by inch. He couldn't find anything until he saw a flare in a bookshelf. He put his hands on the shelf and tried to find what caused this flare. His hands touched something, and his heart skipped a beat. There was another camera. He rushed to his desk to watch the tape on a newly found camera. His hands shook, and his mind could not focus on a single thought. He finally had proof that he was right all the time. Nevertheless, it took him much courage to activate the camera. He would have to live with whatever was there for the rest of his life. But he knew that there was no other choice. The tape was on. Carl first noticed a person changing the SD card on a camera. It seemed like a regular procedure, and Carl could not wait to see who this man was. A second later, the villain revealed his face. It was Conrad. Carl could not believe what he saw. Conrad, his best friend, was a secret police officer, and he was spying on Carl. The tape went on as Conrad took Carl's camera and started editing it. This is why there was nothing on the camera before, but it took just one mistake for everything to be revealed. Then Conrad found the documents Carl was working on, took some notes in his textbook, put everything in its place, and left. Carl was shaking. He could not breathe normally and started crying. Conrad. Out of everyone, Conrad, his best friend, the only person he could trust. All these years, everything they went through, all the time they helped each other live through the worst moments of their lives, were now void. Nothing. Just a lie. Carl was heartbroken. He didn't know what to do, and wasn't even sure if he wanted to live anymore. He felt like all his life had been a giant lie. No, it's not how it should end. One thing that jerk was right about is that this country could not lose Carl, too. It was hard and tough, but he had to do something right now. First, Carl scouted the house to find more cameras. There was one in the bedroom and one in the living room. Now, it's time for action. Two can play this game, and Conrad just lost a huge advantage. Now Carl knows he is being watched. First, Carl edited the footage from the found cameras. Now he knew exactly where they were, and how to hide what should not be found. He didn't want to look too suspicious, though. Sometimes he left some clues, usually useless, so that he would not be detected. As for Conrad, Carl made sure he did not suspect anything. As hard as it was, the two continued their tradition of gathering every 2 weeks. Carl had to put all his willpower to use to not punch his friend in the face. Sometimes he skipped the wine party for made-up reasons, but always edited the videotapes accordingly. One evening, when they sat at the table, Carl said the one thing he had planned for a long time. "Hey, Conrad, I want to show you something I was working on. Just promise to keep the secret, all right? It might cause big problems if anybody knows, except for us. Forever Christmas." "Roscoe, get off. Get off me. Get off, you crazy pup." My mangy mutt wakens me with a slobbery good morning before getting in a round of zoomies. I love him, but I'd also like to murder him. Before I do, though, I should really brush his teeth, I think, as I wipe off the sticky goop on my cheek. "Hey, hun, are you awake?" Lorraine, my wife, pops her head in the door, a festive robe tied around her. "Wait, it's Christmas," covered in dog slobber. "You forget to shut the door?" I chuckle. "Oops." She smiles back, the same one I fell in love with 11 years ago. I'd been a bit cynical about the whole true love thing in my youth. And then Lorraine bashed down all resistance with one glance. "Can you watch the kids for a sec? They're already going crazy, waiting to open presents," she says. "They're not the only ones," I reply. Then, lowering my voice so as not to ruin the magic that is an old man slithering his way down your chimney, "I can't wait to see the look on Nick's face when he unwraps the falcon." Lorraine slides over to me and kisses me. "Merry Christmas, baby," she whispers in my ear. It brings an overwhelming sense of comfort, but somewhere in me, I feel an unusual pang of despair. She slaps my butt and tells me to get up. The feeling retreats as I roll out of bed and throw on some loungers, excited to rile up Nick and Lily. I stomp my way downstairs. "Ho! Ho! Ho! Merry Christmas," I say, giving my best Kris Kringle impression. "Daddy!" They both scream out, their mother's smile plastered across their face. "Look under the tree," shouts Nick. "Daddy, Santa ate all our cookies," counters Lily. We'd spent yesterday designing and baking gingerbread cookies for Santa. It is Lily's favorite. Since she was 3, we'd all designed a dozen gingerbread cookies, 5 of which were subsequently judged to be the plate cookies by Lily. She would walk confidently around each tray, carefully inspecting each cookie, letting out a scientific every now and then, before carefully selecting a cookie from each tray. One tray would have 2 cookies selected from it, upon which Lily would congratulate that person as the winner. "Did he, Lil?" I pick her up and place her on my shoulders and skip into the kitchen to check myself. Well, would you look at that? The man didn't leave a crumb behind. After wrapping all of the gifts, Lorraine and I always share a glass of wine and share the plate cookies. Lorraine, cookie in mouth, glass in hand, walks around to inspect my wrapping, criticizing my bungled tape job. "Well, we'll just tell the kids that Santa had the elves in the training work on these ones," she teases. "Oh, come on. I've gotten so much better. Look at that one in the center. It's pristine," I say. "Honey, that one is mine." She kisses me on the cheek and curls up on the corner of the couch with me after snagging the last cookie from the tray. "I was gonna have that," I say. "Cookies are for those who can wrap. Sorry. You better give me that cookie right now," I say. Lorraine gives me a side eye before taking another bite. I wrap my arm over her shoulder and try to grab it out of her mouth, but she dodges me and scooches her way to the other end of the couch. "Don't you take one more bite." She moves it slowly toward her mouth, opening wide. I grab her ankle and pull her toward me. Lorraine erupts with a giggle, still managing to hold the cookie out of my reach. I grab her arm and crawl toward her until I can pin her arm down and lean over to take a bite of the cookie while it's still in her hand. Thank you, babe." I lean down and take another bite. "Fine, you can have it. Just let me go." I grab it from her and retreat to my side of the couch, making a show of eating the cookie, smacking my lips and swishing it down with a swig of wine. Lorraine kicks at my legs, smirks, finishes her glass of wine, and leans back into me. The house is silent. The kids long asleep. Wind sweeps gently outside as snow continues to fall, as it has throughout the day. Stockings hang above the lit fireplace, cane-shaped M&Ms, paint sticks, and Hot Wheels cozied up inside, waiting to be spilled across the floor tomorrow before being tossed aside for the next gift. Roscoe huffs in the corner, clearly displeased that we're up past his bedtime. Lorraine and I stay wrapped around each other, enjoying the silence that is so rare during the holiday season. and doze off until we awake sometime in the middle of the night and mosey to bed. The peace and warmth I felt last night feel so much more distant, and I get an urge to hold my wife. Lily is still staring in amazement at the empty plate. Something about it looks off. The red is no longer a merry holiday red, rather a crimson blood that paints Santa's sleigh and dyes his bag of presents. The plate clatters to the floor, Roscoe jumping in fright, bumping into Lily and knocking her to the floor. Lily starts to cry out as Lorraine pops into the kitchen behind me. "Hey, sweetie, did Daddy drop the cookie platter?" she says, sweeping Lily up in her arms. "Are you okay?" she asks me. I realize I've been standing frozen, my mind empty, frigid. I shake it off. "Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Lil. I didn't mean to scare you," I say, planting a kiss on her and then Lorraine. "Why don't we open presents?" I say. That elicits a roar from Nick in the other room, and Lily surges back, wiping her tears away. "Now, before we open presents, you all know the drill." I set up the tripod, and we all huddle in front of the tree, the kids wrangling in Roscoe. "We crushed it again, gang," I cheer, the stored image coming through my live eye, projecting the family photo through my retina. I quickly flick through the Christmas album, looking at the years past. 2 years ago, poor Roscoe was stuck with a cone on his head. 5 years ago was Lily's first Christmas. 7 was Nick's. 11 years ago was our first Christmas married in this house, before we adopted Roscoe later that year. Scrolling through now, the same wish every father has hits me. Please don't grow up. The thought causes a pain to ripple through me, erupting in a powerful headache. "David, are you okay?" my wife asks. I click out of the Live Eye screen, turn and face my family, but they're blurry. Hazy may be a more appropriate word for it. Like a memory faded over time, I reset the device and close my eyes. My heart is pumping. My head aches. Something about this moment feels off. A thought beats at the back of my head, but like a weighted box, it refuses to rise to the surface. By the revulsion coursing through my body, I'm not sure I want to know what's inside. The device resets, and I open my eyes. I exhale. The beating in my head subsides. Lorraine wraps her arm around me, no longer in a haze. "Sorry, I just got the worst migraine. Things went blurry for a second," I admit. "There's some aspirin in the kitchen. I'll get you some," she says. "No, it's okay. It's gone. My live eye may have glitched." I grab her arm and pull her back in toward me. "Okay, what are we waiting for? Let's open these presents." The day flashes by in a flurry of ripped up shreds of candy cane and elf-decorated wrapping paper, cut plastic ties that restrain action figures in their boxes, and chocolate-greased candy wrappers as the kids fuel their excitement with sugar trips. Lorraine works at preparing a late Christmas lunch. Roscoe providing assistance, mopping up the floor. I spend the morning putting together race car tracks, helping Lily begin her Lego dollhouse foundation, and clearing the mess of my Kritized wrappings that inevitably cover the floor in pieces. "Dad, I want to fly the drone," says Nick. The highlight of my morning was watching Nick unwrap the gift he'd been talking about all year, a Falcon 1 safety drone. It was a beginner drone with limited flight range and capabilities, designed to spark kids' interest in flying and racing. Parental controls enabled limitations on range, so we could limit flying to just our backyard and at a relative minimum altitude. I already planned on breaking those rules, but for his mother's sake, they provided assurance that he wouldn't crash into the neighbor's window. Fair. I know, buddy, but it's missing a part. We'll have to go to the store. I help Lorraine set the dining room table, my stomach growling at the aromas drifting in from the kitchen. I can't help but feel like I haven't smelled a home-cooked meal in some time, and I almost get emotional when Lorraine sets the ham down in the center. This isn't my life. This life is filled with love and hope, like the Hallmark holiday movie that plays in the background. Something rattles internally. The box, weighted down, chains jangling, screaming to break free. I swear I hear whispers, someone calling my name, penciling. "I can take you tomorrow. I need to pick up your sister's glasses. But we have to go early. David, you're still good to meet with the guy coming to take a look at the leak tomorrow, right?" asks Lorraine. Sorry, I ask, startled back into the moment. "The leak. You can stay here while I take the kids tomorrow morning. We need to get it fixed before Aunt Janie comes to visit." "Oh, yes, sorry. I'll be here, don't worry," I say. She gives me a look of concern, and I get a feeling again, like this moment is almost right, but not quite. As if someone shoved a couple of pieces of a different puzzle into this one, so that from a distance it looks correct, but up close it's clear the image is tainted. I down a couple of glasses of wine as we dig into the feast, which seems to ease the lingering tension inside me. The rest of the day is spent in a shower of giggles and roarous cries, spending the night ramping Hot Wheels with Nick and drawing pictures with Lily. We cap off the night with a board game frenzy. Nick wins twice at Candyland. Lorraine and Lily team up to take Nick and I down at Scrabble Jr., and I win. Sorry. I feel as if I've won an Olympic medal when my final piece lands home. There's a crack in the board across the word, imitating my own feelings. Looking at it causes the box to rattle more violently, and I'm relieved when Lorraine tells the kids it's bedtime. I stay downstairs while Lorraine gets the kids into bed. Christmas Stories for Kids lays on the coffee table. The night was supposed to end with me reading it to the kids, before slowly backing out of the room, exhausted from the day, but overwhelmed with the sense of comfort and security only family can provide. It ended with me crawling into bed with Lorraine, already sound asleep. It ended with a sorry board in pristine condition, a puzzle appropriately assembled. Tonight, however, it ends with me falling asleep on the couch. Roscoe, get off. Get off me. Get off, you crazy pup. Roscoe's covered me in droll again. I must have made my way up to bed in a sleepy stupor last night. Hey, hun, are you awake? I glimpse Lorraine's festive robe. It's Christmas. A crippling pain erupts in the center of my head. Whatever weighted down my box shakes free with the eruption, and it begins to rise to the surface. I'm scared of what's inside. It remains closed, the pain increasing as it continues to rise. Whatever's inside is shaking, begging to escape. It knows that this reality is wrong, tainted. The rogue puzzle pieces pop out, disgusted in their attempt to disguise what is real. The box shakes with such violence now that I swear it jostles my own body. David, can you hear me? Let's get a... The voice trails off, but the hand attached to it touches my arm, and it's only then I realize it is my body shaking. I'm trapped between two realities, but my mind refuses to accept either. The box is almost to the surface, and it's now I realize it contains death. I plead for it to remain unopened. I feel a pinch in my arm, a physical pain barely perceptible in the mental torture about to be unlocked. Then a warmth starts to spread, outward from the pinch, up my arm, and through my chest. It makes it to my head just in time to weigh the box back down once more. I'm trapped in limbo. One direction tortures me with what was. Another tortures me with what is. Time passes. Voices fade in and out. Appreciate you accommodating us on short notice and during the holiday. Yes, well, it's been disturbing how many cases are turning up. Anything we can do to help you combat it, we're happy to help. This is him? Yes, David Groggins, age 43. Police found him unconscious in Reynoldsville 3 weeks ago. Medical tested him then. He consumed it? Yes. Tripodiazolethol was found in his system. Heard they're calling it glitch on the streets. Is that right? Glitch, bug, defect, crash. It seems to only have found its way into methamphetamines at the moment, and we hope to keep it contained. Easier to track one drug supply over many. I read his file. History of drug abuse ever since his family died in a car crash. Day after Christmas, no less. Well, if your reports are accurate, it certainly helps us understand this drug's intent a bit more. Yes, Additional testing is needed, but we're 90% sure he's been reliving the day before the crash. Christmas Day, 4 years ago tomorrow. We are not quite sure how it works. The drug causes a malfunction in the Liv-I system, essentially trapping a person in a continuous memory loop. We suspect it may attach itself to particularly powerful memories, like in this case, though we cannot confirm at this time. We were able to perform an autopsy on one victim a week ago. Damage to the hippocampus and frontal lobe were observed. Preliminary reports suggest those affected might know they're trapped in a memory, that they may experience what may be described as glitches throughout the memory itself. For this man's sake, I hope he doesn't know. Tomorrow's Christmas. Let him have Christmas with his family again. The call scene. A rainy evening. Thunder rumbles in the distance as rain taps steadily against the window of a modest apartment. The dim lighting casts long, restless shadows across the room. The faint flicker of a nearby street lamp seeps through the blinds, adding a melancholic glow to the space. A landline phone rings, sharp and intrusive, cutting through the ambient rain pattern. Sitting on her worn couch with a half-read book resting on her lap, Claire stiffens. She glances at the phone, her heart thumping at the unexpected sound, as if it doesn't fit into her tranquil evening. After a moment's hesitation, she picks it up. Claire, hello? The line crackles faintly, followed by a pause so long it feels static. Then, a calm and deliberate voice speaks. Stranger. Is this 555-3248? Claire. Yes, who is this? The voice carries a weight that makes her sit up straighter. Stranger. You don't know me, but I must talk to you. Claire frowns, her grip on the receiver tightening. Her free hand instinctively brushes the edge of her book, the texture grounding her in an unreal moment. Her eyes dart to the rain-speckled window, searching for a reason and context to anchor the odd exchange. Claire, I think you have the wrong number, stranger. No, Claire, I don't. Her name hits her like a sharp slap, causing her breath to catch. The stranger's calm, steady tone unnerves her. A chill creeps up her spine as she glances around the small apartment. The corners of the room seem darker now, with the shadows stretching like tendrils toward her. Claire, pause. How do you know my name, stranger? That's not important. What matters is that you listen to me. You're not safe. Her mind races. 1,000 explanations surge forward, each more implausible than the last. Her voice wavers, though she forces an edge of firmness into her tone. Claire, sharply. Excuse me? Her grip on the receiver tightens, and her knuckles whiten. An involuntary tremor beneath her surface betrays the facade of control she's trying to project. Stranger, please, just listen. There's no time to to explain everything. You need to leave your apartment now. Don't pack a bag. Don't waste a second. Just go. Claire blinks, her mind catching onto the sheer absurdity of the command. She lets out a nervous laugh, though it sounds hollow even to her ears. Claire, okay, seriously, who put you up to this? Was it Nina? She's always pulling this kind of stranger. This isn't a joke, Claire. The voice pierces her deflection with a sharp edge. Thunder crashes outside, shaking the windows and masking the sound of her sharp inhale. Claire stands instinctively, the book falling from her lap. Her bare feet press against the cold hardwood floor, grounding her again in the surreal moment. Claire, voice rising, I don't know who you are, but, stranger, interrupting, look out your window. Her heartbeat quickens. She hesitates, clutching the receiver as though it's the only thing tethering her to reality. Slowly, she moves to the window, her hand shaking as she pulls back the blinds. The street below is drenched in the rain, but her eyes immediately land on a figure standing across the street, motionless under the flickering light of a street lamp. Their face is obscured by a hood, their silhouette unnervingly still. Claire's breath catches as the figure tilts its head, as though she is aware she is watching. Stranger. Now, do you believe me? Claire stumbles back from the window, her heart pounding. The receiver trembles in her hand. Her voice is a hoarse whisper. Claire. Who is that, stranger? Someone who shouldn't be there. Leave. Now, Claire glances toward the door of her apartment, her mind spinning with questions. The shadows in the room seem to deepen, pressing in around her. She feels the weight of the stranger's words. The urgency is unmistakable. Her instincts scream at her to move, but fear roots her in place. The voice cuts through her attempt at humor, sudden and sharp, freezing her mid-sentence. Stranger. I wouldn't call if it weren't serious. Claire, snapping. I don't even know who you are. Why would I trust anything you're saying, stranger? I've been watching and know about the black car parked across the street. Claire's emotions become numb. Earlier, she had barely noticed the car, attributing it to a neighbor's visitor or someone sheltering from the rain. Now, the memory of its presence sharpens, and her hands shake as she edges toward the window. Her voice drops to a whisper. Claire, how do you... Stranger. It's been there for hours, hasn't it? 2 men inside. They're waiting for something or someone. The stranger's words weigh her down, causing her to hesitate. Slowly, she reaches for the curtain, pulling it back just enough to see. Her heart hammers as her gaze locks onto the sleek black car parked beneath the flickering street lamp. The rain cascades off its hood, dark windows like mirrors, revealing nothing of what lies inside. Her breath catches in her throat, her voice trembling as she forces the question out. Claire, voice trembling. Who are they, stranger? Not friends. That's all you need to know. Her stomach twists. Her mind races, trying to make sense of the situation. She looks back at the car as though staring long enough will unlock some clue to their presence. The thought of being watched targets claws at her sanity. Claire, hoarse whisper. Why would they be watching me, stranger? You have something they want. Or maybe someone you know does. It doesn't matter. People perceive you as a solitary figure. Her vision blurs with rising panic. She steps back from the window, her hand gripping the curtain, as though it's the only thing keeping her upright. Her eyes dart around the apartment, scanning the familiar clutter. Her jacket slung over a chair, an unopened stack of mail on the kitchen counter, and the half-empty glass of wine on the table, as if the answer might be hiding there. But nothing makes sense. Claire, frantic. I don't understand. I'm just an office manager. I don't. Stranger, interrupting, firm. Claire, focus. You're wasting time. Leave now. Take the fire escape. Don't use the front door. Her head spins. The idea of fleeing overwhelms her senses. Rain drums against the window, matching the frantic beat of her heart. She stumbles toward the couch, snatching up her phone and keys, her voice rising in a desperate plea. Claire, shaking her head. And go where, stranger? Anywhere but there. Head toward the train station. Don't stop until you're in a crowded place. She freezes, gripping the phone tightly, her knuckles white. Her voice drops to a whisper, tears threatening to spill. Claire, choking. I don't know if I can trust you. The line goes silent for a beat, but when the voice returns, it's colder, steelier, a warning, laced with urgency. Stranger, you don't have to trust me, but if you stay, they will come inside, and they won't knock. The words struck her deeply. A fresh wave of fear courses through her as a sound cuts through the rain. A distant car door shutting. Claire's breath hitches. She turns back to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to see a shadowy figure step out of the black car. Another figure follows, their movements deliberate and synchronized. One figure adjusts their coat, and for a fleeting moment, she notices the gleam of something metallic at their side. Stranger, urgently. Claire, go now. Her breath tightens in her throat. The phone slips from her hand, clattering onto the table as adrenaline takes over. She bolts for the window, leading to the fire escape, fumbling with the latch. The rain hisses against the glass, and the faint hum of voices from the street grows louder. She freezes as a sharp knock echoes from the front door. It's noisy, firm, and final. The sound reverberates through the apartment like a countdown. Stranger. From the fallen receiver. Faint. Don't look back. Just run. The rain outside grows heavier, drumming against the window, as if urging her to act. Claire stands paralyzed, her feet rooted to the floor, and her mind caught between disbelief and the suffocating weight of fear. Claire, growing frantic, picking up the phone. Wait. I need more than this. I need answers. Who are you? How do you know all of this? There's a long pause on the other end. The silence is so profound that she can hear her shaky breaths. When the voice returns, it's softer, almost regretful. Stranger. Someone who owes you a debt. A big one. Claire, confused. A debt? I don't even know you. Stranger. You don't remember, but you saved my life once. And now, I'm saving yours. Her thoughts whirl, memories colliding in her mind like shattered glass. Fragments of the past flash before her. Small acts of kindness, fleeting interactions with strangers. But then, one moment stands out. Years ago, she pulled an injured man out of a wrecked car on a rainy night like this one. The metallic tang of blood, the desperate sound of his gasps, and her trembling hands pressed against his wound until paramedics arrived. His face, pale and bleeding, swims into focus in her mind. Claire, voice shaking. Is this about that car accident? Were you? Stranger, firmly. There's no time for questions. Go now, Claire. I'll call you again when it's safe. The phone clicks, the line going dead. The finality of the sound lingers in her ears. Claire stands frozen, the receiver still pressed to her ear, her knuckles white. She flinches as a crack of thunder rattles the windows. Slowly, she lowers the phone, her eyes drifting back to the window. The black car remains motionless, but now a faint glow of a cigarette flares inside. Her chest tightens as she stares at the tiny ember, an ominous beacon in the darkness. Claire, to herself, whispering, "What the hell is going on?" Suddenly, a faint creak from the hallway shatters the silence. Her heart leaps into her throat, her breath catching. She spins toward the sound, her eyes wide and searching. The noise could be anything. The old building settling, a neighbor, but now it feels like a warning. The hairs on her arms rise, and instinct takes over. She grabs her jacket and keys from the couch, her movements hurried and clumsy. Without a second thought, she moves to the window. The rain lashes at the glass, its icy touch shocking her as she forces the stubborn frame open. The fire escape looms outside, a slick, glistening path into the storm. Climbing through, the cold rain instantly soaks her, plastering her hair to her face. The metal beneath her feet is treacherous, every step a gamble. She grips the railing tightly, her knuckles aching as she descends. Below her, the black car suddenly roars to life. The headlights snap on, slicing through the downpour. She catches her breath. A door slams, and a tall, shadowy figure steps out. Their movements are purposeful and unhurried. Claire doesn't wait to see more. She runs, her feet slipping on the slick fire escape as she reaches the ground. The rain blurs her vision, each drop like a needle against her skin. Her breath is ragged, her pulse pounding in her ears. Behind her, the unmistakable sound of footsteps splashing in the water. Pools echoes through the narrow alley. The sound is steady and deliberate. A voice, not the stranger's, pierces the storm with a low, menacing call. Voice: Claire, stop. You can't run forever. The words twist in her mind, each syllable heavy with malice. She doesn't look back. Every instinct screams at her to keep moving. She darts into an alley, her feet slipping on the wet concrete. The flickering street lamps overhead cast eerie shadows that seemed to chase her. Although the train station isn't far away, every step feels like a lifetime. Her muscles burn, her lungs ache, but she pushes forward, the stranger's voice echoing in her mind. Stranger's voice in her mind. You're not safe. As the rain intensifies, so does her determination. Each crack of thunder feels like a countdown. Each shadow is a threat. She is confident that she cannot stop. Whatever this is, whatever danger is hunting her, standing still means death. And Claire isn't ready to die. End. Dial tone. Dear Jess, Tijuana, Mexico. Pay phone. Outside Mercado El Popo, 1999. Sound of coins clinking, dialing tones. Aló? ¿Quién habla? Myra. Es Leah? Leah. Dios mío. I can't believe it's you. We've been going crazy here. Your mother comes to my house every day asking if I've heard from you. Where are you? Are you okay? I made it to Tijuana. I'm at a payphone near the market. The phone keeps eating my coins, so I don't have much time. You sound different. Your voice, you sound sick. Are you sick? I'm not sick, Myra. Just tired. So tired. Remember how we used to stay up all night studying for Senora Martinez's chemistry exams? This is different. I haven't really slept in days. Days? Leah, you're scaring me. Everything is scary here. Remember how we used to talk about leaving Venezuela? Making plans in your backyard? Drinking your mother's terrible café con leche? Sound of traffic passing, horns honking. Of course I remember. We were going to be roommates in Miami, get jobs at fancy hotels, maybe even meet Ricky Martin. We had everything figured out. We were so naive, Mayre. So stupid. We thought it would be like the movies. Save some money, buy a plane ticket, start a new life. But the visas, they kept rejecting us. And now you're with the coyotes. Leah, everyone here knows someone who didn't make it. Please come home. Home to what? The markets are empty, Mayra. The hospitals have no medicine. Remember when my little brother got dengue last year? Mama had to trade her wedding ring for antibiotics. I can't watch my family live like that anymore. Warning beep from the phone. Hold on. Need to add more coins. Sound of coins dropping. Myra, I have to tell someone. I can't keep carrying this alone. Tell me what? What happened? The group I'm with. There was this girl. My age, maybe younger. From Guatemala. The coyotes, they made her carry drugs inside her body. Little packets, like grapes. She cried all night before they made her swallow them. Dios mío, that's not even the worst part. There was this woman with us from El Salvador, in her 50s with grandchildren in Los Angeles. She showed us their pictures the first night. She couldn't keep up in the desert. Her legs just gave out. Leah, we left her there, Mayra, under a cactus. She begged us not to go. She promised she'd rest just for an hour, then catch up. I told them I would stay with her. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving her alone. But she grabbed my arm, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "No, mi hija, one death is enough." She made me promise to go. She made me do it. Sound of crying, voice breaking. I had to go, Mayra. I had no option. I had to run to catch up with the group. I could hear her praying behind me, her voice getting fainter and fainter. We tried crossing that same night, but there was a massive drug bust happening near the crossing point. Cartel activity. Border patrol everywhere. Helicopters with searchlights. The coyotes said it was too hot, too risky. We had to turn back. Now we're stuck here in Tijuana, waiting to try again. And all I can think about is how we left her there, alone, with just those pictures of her grandchildren, sounds of street vendors calling out in Spanish. I can barely carry my own jacket now. It weighs more than all our school books combined. Remember how we used to complain about those heavy books? Bitter laugh. What I wouldn't give to be back in that classroom now. You can come back. Please, it's not too late. It is. There's no going back. The desert, it changes you, changes everything. I see things at night when we're trying to sleep. Shadows moving. Sometimes I think it's the border patrol. Sometimes something worse. The coyotes watch us constantly. One girl tried to run away last week. They caught her. She came back with bruises. She wouldn't explain. Background chatter in Spanish, English, and indigenous languages. Last night, we tried crossing through the river. Everyone said it would be safer than the desert. But there were farmers on the cliffs above the river. Farmers with rifles, Myra. They didn't shout warnings, didn't tell us to go back. They just started shooting. The water, voice breaking. The water turned red. People were screaming, trying to swim back. But the current was so strong. We had to stay underwater, holding our breath, praying they wouldn't see us. A mother lost grip of her baby's hand. I can still hear her screaming, "Por Dios, Leah." Some people just disappeared under the water, never came back up. The farmers just stood there, watching, like they were hunting animals, not watching people die. Human beings, parents, children, dreams. Warning beep from the phone. I keep thinking about what Papa used to say before he died, about America being the land of opportunity. But he never knew about this part. The nightmare you have to survive to reach those opportunities. If they catch me, I've heard stories about the detention centers, but I can't go back, Mayra. There's nothing left in Venezuela. There's your family. There's me. We love you. Love doesn't fill empty stomachs. Can't buy medicine. Can't build a future. The inflation. It's worse now than when I left. My mother's entire month's salary can barely buy a week's groceries. I have to make it, Mayra. I have to. Sound of more coins being inserted. You know what I think about most? Those stupid telenovelas we used to watch after school. Remember how we'd laugh at how dramatic they were? Now I understand. Real life, real desperation. It's more dramatic than any telenovela. Leah, please. You're trembling. I can hear it in your voice. I am. I'm scared all the time. But I'm also angry. Angry that this is what it takes. That we have to risk our lives just for a chance at a decent life. That farmers with rifles get to decide who lives and who dies. Distant police sirens. The coyotes are signaling. We're moving again tonight. Mayra, if something happens to me. No, don't you dare say goodbye. Listen to me. If something happens, tell my mother I understand now. Why she cried when she found out I was leaving. Tell her I'm sorry for the pain I'm causing her, but not for trying. Tell her what she always told us. La esperanza es lo último que se pierde. Hope is the last thing we lose. Leah, please, and Mayra, that night before I left, when we stayed up planning our future, those dreams we shared, keep them. Maybe not Miami, maybe not the fancy hotel jobs, but something better than this. Promise me you'll keep hoping. I promise. But you have to promise to stay alive. I'll try. I have to go. They're waiting. Don't forget me, okay? Never. Leah, wait. Te quiero, Mere. Maybe next time. Maybe I'll call you from the other side. Sound of coins running out, followed by the click of the phone being hung up. Then a dial tone.